Hi, and welcome back to Tracerburnout. I'm Dan.
I'm Roger.
The members of VFW Post 960 have kindly allowed us to film our next few episodes here in their hall, to which we share them our great thanks.
Today, we'll be talking to Charles Digger Davis, an Air Force fighter pilot from the 1990s and 2000s. Stay tuned.
Enjoy.
Digger, welcome to Tracerburnout. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it was great. My pleasure.
So normally when we lead off, we like to just talk about people's military backgrounds within their family and kind of go from there. So do you come from a multi-generational military family?
Oh, yeah. I have a very odd background because I started off in the Virginia Air National Guard, enlisted at 19. Well, I was an aircraft mechanic on A-7s, if you know what those are, for about 4 years, and then went to the F-16. And then I finished college, and they sent me to flight school. So I flew F-16s because I was part of the Virginia Air National Guard, so I flew with them. And then I went on active duty from there.
Interesting.
So I left the Guard I joined the Guard in 87. I left the Guard in 95 and went active duty and retired active duty 2012.
What about your family background in
The
service?
family side, this is where this comes in. My dad, Air Force, middle of the 50s. He wasn't in Korea, right after Korea. He did 4 years. His dad, my grandfather, who passed away before I was born, World War I, Army. He was in France. I have his actual trunk that he had all of his stuff in, and I have his original rank from when he was in the Army and a couple other things. I have the original letter that came from General Pershing thanking all the military members for their service during World War I in France.
Do you know offhand, or do you remember what unit he was in?
Not offhand. I have it, but I don't remember the unit.
That's still really cool.
It's really, really, really cool. And prior to that, I know my father told me, my father's gone now, that we had family in the Civil War and Revolutionary War from the Davis side. I know from my mom's side, I have a great grandfather who was in the Civil War, and he was on the Confederacy side, of course. 5 battles, never got hit or wounded per se. He had a bullet go through his hat. And he was mad because it ruined a good hat. That's what my grandmother told me he said. So it was her grandfather. But he got captured, and what is the field just south of Petersburg? Five Forks, South Forks. One of the battlefields down there, he got captured in the latter part of Civil War and was a prisoner of war. But he's buried in the Arlington Confederate Circle, the Confederate Circle in Arlington.
Wow.
Even though they've changed a bunch of that right now.
Yeah, recently too.
Yeah.
And my great-great-grandmother's buried with him there because she died in 1925, and they had to have permission to bury her first, and because he died in 1929. But technically, what I was told, under the Confederacy, he would have been a sergeant during the fighting, but he continued to maintain and grow rank as he progressed on. So he
brevet promotions?
Yeah. I think if that's a correct term. He died when he was living in Washington, D.C., and my understanding was he was technically a Confederate brigadier general, is what he was said. But his headstone doesn't say anything about rank. It basically has that he was part of the Confederacy and when he died, which is really cool. But I have an uncle on my mom's side, Air Force, Vietnam. I have another uncle who was retired Navy, who was Vietnam. I have a grand uncle on my mother's side who was Army World War II, and a bunch of other smatterings in there. My son was Army for about 3 years, and like I mentioned you guys before, I'd taken a bullet. And now I have my other son, he's my stepson, but he's still mine, who just finished Army National Guard or basic training at Fort Leonard Wood. And now he's in the Army National Guard, just got home.
Nice.
So, and I never pushed my son or neither one of my sons to go to the military. My dad never pushed me to go to the military. I just gave him the example of what it did for me, and I saw what it did for my dad, and I was just enamored by it.
Yeah. Okay.
Does that help a little bit for my family?
That's impressive. So,
so it's a long family history.
So for you, why the Air Force?
Well, when I was a kid, my dad being in the Air Force, he was Air Police at the time, which, has changed names a bunch. But he was Air Police, and he was also K-9 in the Air Police. And so I remember looking through all of his photos and stuff like that when I was a teenager and a little kid. And all these pictures were just cool. The guys were just, having fun, some dude asleep and they got his hand in water, things like that. They have model airplanes that they're lighting on fire and then throwing them in the barracks, and he had pictures of all these, well, at the time, they were brand new airplanes, here's a brand new F-86. It just came out of the factory, it's in England. And I just went, that is just so cool. And one thing I do remember, and even as a kid, I didn't quite get it, but I knew I really liked these pictures. He had a bunch of pictures of Jane Mansfield.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know who that is?
Oh, yeah. One of the original blonde bombshells.
Oh, yeah. She was what my mom told me. She's the poor man's Marilyn Monroe. That's what my mom would say.
I don't know, man.
But
Jane
I don't know
Mansfield
either.
was-
But Mariska Hargitay
Yeah.
on SUV.
yeah,
apparently
Law and
does.
Order SVU.
Yeah, that's obviously it's her mom. Jane Mansfield's her mom.
I did not know that.
Yeah, Jane died when I think she was like 4 or something like that. But anyway, she came over on a USO tour or something like that. And
Yeah.
my dad had to be her bodyguard while she was in England at the base where he was. So he got all these personal pictures with her. He had a handwritten note from her. And my dad's dog name was Skipper. So she's like, thanks, Dave. Because his last name being Davis, they just called him Dave. Said, thanks, Dave and Skipper. Best wishes, love, Jane. And I saw stuff like that. And of course, you know what Jane Mansfield looked like. You'll go and Google her after this, I'm sure, Roger. She was amazing. So I went, dude, this is a kind of thing I want to be a part of. The stories are awesome.
Yeah.
I chose Air Force because I was looking at the airplanes. I went, dude, I want to freaking fly. I said, flying would be really cool. And then, unfortunately, I hate to say this, in '85, when Top Gun came out, I was a senior in high school, and I went, oh, I'm doing that. That's what I'm going to do.
You hook, line, and sinker.
Oh, yeah. I didn't necessarily want to go to the Navy, but I said, I'm flying airplanes, and I want to go to the Air Force because I didn't want to land on a boat. You know what I mean? It's cool looking, but no, I didn't want to land on a boat. So I went to the Air Force. But that was the main reason, because I wanted to be able to fly airplanes. But I did apply to the Navy, Marine Corps, and the active duty Air Force when I was looking into it. But the Marine Corps was great. They we'll get you to flight school, but we can't guarantee you get fixed wing. I'm like, God, I want to be a rotor head. I don't want to fly helicopters. The Navy, I went, no, I really don't want to be on a boat unless I'm fishing, drinking beer. And the regular Air Force, active duty at the time, came back and said, we don't need any pilots, we'll make you a navigator. I flipped in the finger and I go, I'm out. Dude, no. Because my guard unit had already told me that, hey, we'll send you to flight school. Just come back and fly F-16s for us. I'm like, great. Oh, and the Virginia Air National Guard now flies the Raptor.
Nice.
So I left when active duty, and then they started flying Raptors. I went, that's okay. I'm all right with that.
So you enlist in the Air National Guard when you're 19, just presumably right after high school, right?
Yeah, I was 6 months out of high school. Yeah.
So that's a part-time job. What are you doing full-time while you're doing that?
It was funny because I was a full-time college student at VCU at the time,
Okay.
but I was also the manager of a truck accessory store in Fredericksburg. And during that time, and the reason I got that job is because the owner was a former Raven FAC from Vietnam.
Wow.
So he saw that I was in the Guard and going into the flying side. So he goes, I'll hire you.
Helping airmen out.
Exactly. That's what it was. And he was a little crazy too. Vietnam FAC A guy from the Ravens.
Yeah,
So
nice. You got to be a little crazy to do.
he was a little crazy. Yeah.
So I know how it works on the Army side. I'm assuming for the Air Force you're doing SMP, Simultaneous Membership Program, which is what we called it when you're doing National Guard, along with ROTC towards commissioning.
No, I didn't do ROTC. I did
Okay.
the old school route. So
Okay.
I did my enlisted time, and then I applied as my unit told me to go to what the Air National Guard calls not OTS, but let me see, AMS is what they call it.
Okay.
It's Academy of Military Science. It's the exact same program that the active duty OTS does.
Yeah.
They do that in 12 weeks. Of course, the Guard does it in 6. And the only
That's
difference,
steep.
the only difference we didn't do in AMS was we didn't shoot. You didn't qualify on a weapon, but I was already qualified on at the time M16s, and then I just qualified in M9s when I got back, or 9 mils.
Okay.
So yeah, it was, but I was just considered a traditional guardsman and then a college student, and then when I graduated college, then I went to AMS. So
Okay.
I did, just like if anybody else would apply to OTS, I got accepted that way.
Okay.
So I I did the harder way, is what I was told.
Right.
I just knew it was the way to go.
Yeah.
And so you were commissioned after those 6 weeks?
I was commissioned after 6 weeks, second lieutenant, and I went back to my guard unit just for a little bit, and then they sent me to flight school because most international guard units won't send you to commissioning or won't send you to officer training unless they have a spot for you anyway.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I got my commission, and then I went to at the time Usairforce base in Lubbock, Texas, for a year of flight school, flying T-37s, T-38s.
Okay.
So, and then after that, you have to go to your what they call fighter lead-in training. Flight school strictly just learn how to fly for the Air Force, flying jets, and then fighter lead-in training is taking that last airplane you flew in, which was a T-38, and flying it like a fighter. Bombing and trying to do dogfighting stuff, and you're not good at it. You suck at it. You don't know what it is. You know what I mean?
Right.
You just listen to the instructor go this way, go that way, and that's only about 2 months or so. And that's also we do the pitch and puke where they spin you in the chair, the high G environment, because you have to be able to take 9 Gs to fly the F-16. If you can't take 9 Gs, you can't fly the F-16. And it's not just 9 Gs once. You have to be able to hold 9 Gs for 30 seconds and not pass out. You have to be able to look over your shoulder and take 7 Gs for it's either 30 seconds or a minute. And then at the end, you have to be able to fly a profile that takes about 90 seconds to 2 minutes where you're going to hit 9 Gs at least 3 or 4 times. So they actually got a stick. You're moving the stick in the centrifuge.
Because of those physical requirements, what's the, I don't want to say dropout ratio, but the non-passing to passing ratio, I guess?
I don't know what that would be, compared to, when you think about like special ops training, there's always some sort of attrition, things like that. I didn't see it so much. When you get to that phase of it, you're probably going to make it for the most part. You see most of the guys falling out when they go through basic flight training, what it's called undergraduate pilot training, for that 1 year, because you just can't get the handle of it. Once you get to your fighter lead-in training, you're probably going to be able to handle okay because you're used to flying, you're used to what the airplane can do. You already know what Gs feel like. Now you just have to be able to take more of them. Because the T-38, you can still put 6 Gs on your body, which still hurts. 9 Gs just hurts more.
So during that first year, you're essentially building up a tolerance,
exactly,
so that by the time you get to those last few weeks, you can take it.
When I was 19, I guess I got a backseat ride in the A7K model, the two-seated version, because I won some airman award. And I'm sitting in the brief with the other pilots. They give me a flight suit. I'm like, dude, this is awesome. I'm gonna rock this. But I had never been exposed to Gs. I'd never flown in a high A7 wasn't so much high performance, but at the time it was cool.
Yeah.
Those guys are sitting there, eating their lunch and swigging down Cokes, and I'm afraid I'm going to throw up my Cheerios just sitting there. And we go out to the airplane and get all strapped in, and I worked the flight line, so I knew everything that was happening there. Yeah. We take off and fly, and I felt like crap the whole time. I didn't get sick until we came back to the field, and they come over top of the runway and do the pitch out. We did the pitch out, and I'm like, oh boy, I couldn't throw up because I didn't have enough in my stomach.
Yeah.
But we got on the ground, and I walked back to the ops building, and I'm just like beat. I'm just like, oh my God, how do these guys do this? These other guys walking back like lighting cigarettes, whatever else they're doing. I'm like, oh my God, how do you guys put up with this? They're like, it's no big deal. I'm like, I go home and I sleep for like 4 hours because I'm done. And so then I go to flight school, and then I go to F-16 training. And I remember sitting there. One time I had the light came on. I'm sitting there wolfing down like a Big Mac because I missed trying to get a decent lunch. And I'm in the middle of a brief, and I'm wolfing down my food and a Coke and a fry. And I go, oh, yeah. Because now you get used to it.
Yeah.
You made it.
Yeah, your body gets used to
it.
So you take off and you're like, whatever, no big deal. And then I remember giving other people back seat rides and go, dude, everything's good, man. If you start to feel bad, don't worry about it.
Yeah. It gets better.
Fun. It gets better. It was always fun though. It was never a job.
So you actually got fully commissioned in what year?
Fully commissioned in February of 92. This is when I got fully commissioned, and then I fully retired, or officially retired, 1 February of 2012.
So how much time did you spend with your guard unit after commissioning?
Hey, let me see. I joined in January of 87, and I left December of 95.
Okay, so you were with them for another few years.
Yeah, I was with them for a while. And then in 95 time frame is when, right after the Gulf War, their regular or active duty had let too many pilots go because, they were trying to do the drawdown, the standard. I don't know if the Army
end
does
of
the same
history,
thing.
right?
Yeah, I don't know if the Army does the same thing, but they do this sine wave of personnel.
Yes.
So they let these guys get out, and because they all went to the airlines. Airlines are soaking dudes up, so guys are getting out to make money. And then the active duty said, oh crap, we don't have enough pilots. So they went to the Guard and Reserve and said, if you have major weapons system experience, which means fighter stuff, we'll let you back for extended active duty for 2 years. I went, okay. So I went to my commander at Virginia. At the time we were at Richmond, and I said, hey, I want to do this. And during that time frame also, you always had an active duty pilot that was a part of that Guard unit.
Okay.
So I went to him and I said, what do I do? He goes, we'll work it all out. He goes, you're probably going to end up flying like, a trainer aircraft or something. They're just trying to fill slots. I said, dude, I just want to fly. I want to fly full time. I don't want to do this part-time stuff. So we put in my paperwork, excuse me, and I got the notification back that I've been accepted to extended active duty. And you have two choices. You can either go to Cannon Air Force Base, fly an F-16s when they still have F-16s there, or you can go to Kunsan Air Force Base, South Korea, fly F-16s. I went, man, and that's remote. Kunsan's remote. And I was married at the time, and I went, oh man, I don't want to go to Korea. I'll go to Cannon. I'll do Cannon. They went, great. You're going to Kunsan.
It's a loyalty test. Right?
It is, because and now I'm on the active duty side. I don't get to say this.
You don't get to pick your way anymore.
It's that thing of we're going to give him a choice, make him feel like he has a say, and we're going to do what the hell we want to anyway. And that's what they did. But Kunsan was a great time because it was nothing but combat thinking the whole time while you're remote. You're worried about what the North is going to do constantly, and it was a great experience.
But before we get too far into that, let me ask you.
Yeah.
Your National Guard unit had spent all this time training you up, getting you into flight school because you were going to come back and be a pilot for them, which you were for a couple of years. Mm-hmm. Did they feel any sort of way about you going active?
Not at all. What happened was when I brought that up, I didn't know this until I brought it up and said, hey, can I go extended active duty? We had 5 lieutenants at the time that were pilots. And what most Guard units would do is they send guys down the pipeline to go through flight school and the aircraft school. They plan for attrition for guys not making it. And we spent 5 guys through and everybody made it. Because I went through and a guy 3 months behind me who was from the engine shop, a friend of mine, he goes through, he makes it, and a couple other guys and another guy. So everybody made it. And
so they didn't have a problem with losing you because they had already planned on losing at least somebody during the training.
Right. And I found out I didn't even have a personnel number. They didn't have room for me to be in the unit.
Yeah.
When I first
they just make space, yeah.
When I first came back from F-16 training, I didn't fly the F-16 for 3 months because they're like, we don't have enough room for guys right now. We got to make sure these guys have it. But I'm like, okay, I'm a lieutenant. They're like, we're going to make you go sit at the end of the runway and just be the supervisor of flying from the end of the runway in the truck. I go, all right. Well, I did that for 3 months. But they felt bad about me doing that because I never came back and griped about it or anything. And I was like, I'm around airplanes. This is cool. They went, we're gonna start flying you. So they flew me. But when I went active duty, they said, dude, you're actually going to help us out because we still don't have you billeted next to a personal slot. Yeah. So that's actually going to help us out. And they said, get your 2 years done and dude, come on back. We'll have you come back. So Kunsan is 1 year remote. I did my 1 year and then the regular Air Force said, what do you want to do? And I said, okay, can I go to Aviano, in Italy? And they went, you're going to incur 3 years if you do that. I went, okay. So they went,
where do
sure.
I sign?
They said, sure, go to Aviano. So I went to Aviano. Never called Virginia back. They knew I was active duty. I was out of their hair. Yeah. So I went to Aviano for 3 years. And that was 97 to 2000, which a lot of fun stuff happened during that time frame in Europe. Mm-hmm. So I just went, I'm going to go to Aviano. And then long story short, I ended up jumping from Aviano, got accepted to go to Air Force fighter weapons school, and like the Navy's Top Gun side, but the Air Force is harder, and it's also 6 months.
Oop, shots fired.
Whatever, they know Air Force weapons school's harder. We don't make out with our instructors and stuff like that. But anyway, I get selected from Aviano to go to Air Force fighter weapons school, which is 6 months, and then I go to Cannon. I get selected
where you were supposed to
where I
go.
wanted to go.
originally.
Yeah.
So I now get sent to Cannon. So I'm at Cannon from 2000 2003.
Well, going back a little bit, my Air Force knowledge is
Spot on.
limited at best. So the difference between flying, because you flew F-16s the whole time, right? So
Yep.
the difference in flying and whatever potential rules of engagement you had in Korea versus what you had in Italy.
It's gonna honestly the rules of engagement or the rules are going to be fairly similar as far as what you're going to do. But so we never crossed into North Korea ever.
Right.
You were along the DMZ and things like that, and we never carried live ordnance along the DMZ when I was there in '90. That was '96, because nothing was flowing south. One thing that did flow south, which made the news later, so I can say this now, was they had a North Korean defect in a MiG-19, and he was in his pattern over North Korea airfield right across the border. He's in the pattern right over top of the field and just goes, whoop, he pitches out and pitches over into South Korea. I was like, wow. So, and they had some fighting with the North Koreans, brought down a little mini sub and were engaging the.
They're still doing the
Yeah.
subs.
Oh, yeah. They're doing this. They're fighting some South Koreans. But the rules of engagement were going to be you don't engage North Korea because they had so much intel on what was going on. We knew before those guys even would drop an air biscuit what was going on. You know what I mean? So, and when you get to Italy, I got there right at the end of Bosnia.
Yeah, and you were Kosovo.
I was a Kosovo
was
vet.
kicking off. Yeah,
So I got there at the end of Bosnia. So we were still flying caps in Bosnia with live ordnance. So the rules of engagement were you didn't drop on anybody, you didn't shoot on anybody unless you were directed to do so. So it was the rules of engagement were really, really tight.
Then when Kosovo kicked off,
Kosovo was a different story.
there was an air campaign before there was anything else.
Exactly.
So what was your part in that?
Well, when I was at Aviano, I had been upgraded to a forward air controller airborne. So I was a FAC-A, a fast FAC in the Viper. So I got to designate targets and either drop on them myself or have somebody else, bring somebody else in to drop on them. So when Kosovo happened, we had ATO targets, targets that were dictated they were going to be hit by whether the other airplane was going to be out there, a unit. And we also had in all of Serbia, not just down in Kosovo. But in Kosovo, we have what's called the Kosovo Engagement Zone. And FAC-As like myself, mainly guys from Aviano, from either the 510th, which is what I was, or the triple nickel, would go in and find targets using intel information that we had received, and we'd search them out. If we found it to be valid, we would drop on them that way. We own the rules of engagement. So if we found the target, we could hit it because we had intel telling us what it was, and we could go and find it.
Yeah.
What was a typical target?
It could be anything from artillery, mortar pits,
like fixed positions.
fixed positions, or they had troop movement stuff that was going on. We did have some ATO targets, some dictated targets in Kosovo. Like we went after a couple of the Army facilities there and wiped out the barracks with, usually GPS guided munitions, JDAMs. And I dropped a lot of laser guided munitions there, especially when I was doing FAC-A work. So I would usually have some sort of 500-pound laser guided weapon, maybe rockets, and then I have a wingman so he can kind of look out while we're doing stuff because they would still shoot at us.
Yeah.
Did a lot of night stuff, so we're doing a lot of night vision goggles stuff. They shot a lot. They shot at us a lot. That was the first time I'd ever been shot at, and all my memories of watching the original Gulf War in '91 just came back to me because that's what it looked like under night vision goggles. It's amazing. It's like they knew we were on the way.
Yeah.
Which they did.
Yeah.
You know.
What was the op tempo like? Like you go out and you fly, a mission, you hit your specific targets, and then how long again till you flew again?
It could be we were the squadron in the base technically was on 24-hour ops, so nothing ever shut down.
Right.
The cool thing was the wing commander at the time, Dan Leaf, General Leaf, he was a 1-star at the time, retired 3-star now, great dude. He was a great leader because he knew we were on 24-hour ops and people still needed to do some other things on the base, finance, any of those things that had to do with personnel. He made those guys go to 24-hour ops. He goes, they couldn't do anymore the 7:30 to 4:30 thing.
Bankers hours.
No, because you're supporting combat ops now. Your reason you're here is support combat ops. So he put everybody on combat ops. So I knew it was great.
Yeah.
And it made things so much easier. They probably didn't like it.
Oh, of
but we were like, dude, I got to break. I got to go to finance. I got to fix this, or I got to go to personnel because I got to get a new card, whatever it's going to happen.
Yeah.
But usually when we flew, your mission, because we were at Aviano and you had a lot of times fly all the way down the Adriatic, go hit a tanker to get gas, go in country, maybe come back out again, get more gas if you haven't delivered all your ordnance, depending on how long you could remain in your AOR or specific AOR at the time, and then go back in. And then usually we would hit the tanker again on the way home, just because it's like 400, 500 miles, and we just wanted to go mock snot, climb up real high and go fast.
Yeah.
And so might have a mission might last 6 to 8 hours, is what it's going to be. If it wasn't, if we knew the mission was going to be that long, you probably didn't fly the next night. You mission planned, and then you flew again the next night. So
About 24, 36 hours?
yeah, you would fly again. A lot of guys, because the Air Force under normal training rules you have to have a waiver if you fly more than like 80 hours in a month or something like that. We all had to have waivers because we were flying so much. I think we kicked that off at the end of March, and officially it was done, end of May, really. I think the last bomb was dropped into May, beginning of June. I flew, I think 30.
That was in 99?
It was 99. I flew 36 missions, I think, total. And I added up how much munitions I dropped. It was like 980,000 pounds of munitions is what I dropped alone during that time. I did everything from looking for surface-to-air missiles, SAM hunting with the guys, the F-16s from Spangdahlem, which had the system set up to look for that stuff, and I'm carrying the bombs. But it's funny, as soon as you get in country and they start shooting at you, it's no longer I'm just going to try to bomb that guy. I'm trying not to get hit.
Yeah.
Because quick story, me and my wingman, Krakow, last name was Kane. So Krakow and I were inbound side by side. We're both have night vision goggles on. So I looked to see where he is. We're up in about the mid-20s or so, 25,000 feet or so. And we see, it turns out to be an SA-3 launch going up. And we're like, oh, there's a sight. We don't think it's really shot at us because they're not using their radar. So our radar warning receiver isn't doing anything.
It's not popping,
But they also know if they turn the radar on, they're going to get shot with a high-speed anti-radiation missile. So they don't turn it on. They just shoot visually. They shoot to the noise. Well, so they shot this SA-3, and in my jet, I can slew my system to where I can see the hot spot on the ground.
Yeah.
Well, you guys have seen NVGs. You don't have depth perception. I don't know how far away that is. So I just throw my system onto the ground where the hot spot is, where it launched, and I'm trying to dial everything in and this, that, and the other, and I glance up at the plume, and how do you know that that something's going to go by you or not towards you? Is you have what we call movement on the canopy. It's like car lights. If a car's coming toward you and it's moving this way in your view, then it's going by you. Mm-hmm. Well, both my Krakow and I are doing the same thing at the same time. And I look up, and all of a sudden I just see the plumes getting brighter. It's not moving on the canopy. I'm like, oh crap, So, and I say on the radio, like, Krakow SAM launch, and he's like, and I look over, he's already upside down. We're both doing this to try to get out of the way and kicking out, self-protection countermeasures and stuff. And then we turn back, we get back on the ground, and we said the exact same thing. What I just told you, he was doing the exact same thing. He was trying to dial it all in, looked up and goes, oh crap. And he just maneuvered. He didn't say anything on the radio, but we had a lot of that going on. But the Spangdahlem guys that were shooting high-speed anti-radiation missiles couldn't shoot at it because they didn't have the radar on.
Yeah.
And you don't shoot at those things blindly. That's $1 million missile. You just don't go, boonk, kick it off the airplane. So,
what's a release authority for something like that?
If they could what they call range it in, they could have shot at it. Yeah. Since it was an air campaign, there weren't any guys on the ground, which is false. We knew there was going to be some sort of special ops dude somewhere on the ground, and we just knew that because of our experience flying, what happens in these sort of conflicts. Mm-hmm. Just normal Army was not on the ground. And but a couple of times when we got later into the fight, we had to be, as a FAC-A, we had to get permission to drop on some things. Because we found out later that you had SEALs, I think Delta, I know SAS was there, and they were doing stuff. Of course, it wasn't going back to the main air operations center to let those guys know. Mm-hmm. And we had a target list we were allowed to hit. And so in Kosovo, it was toward the end. I was doing a daylight mission, which is a little unnerving because they can see you. And I found a tower, and we had knocked out most of the towers. It was like a radio, like a cell tower looking type thing almost. Had a bunch of tracks up to it, but no vehicles. And it was a small dish connecting to the side of the tower now. And I went, oh, I don't remember this being hit. And I look on my map, and the map's not showing the tower. And I go, well, this is weird. This is a legal target. And then I call back to the operations center and said, I have appears to be a tower, a radio tower at this location, gave them the grid and the lat longs. And I said, I want permission to hit it. And they went standby. Me and my wingman doing a couple circles, looking around, see if everybody else was running around on the ground, because the Serbs were the only ones that had military vehicles.
Right.
They basically had, unfortunately, killed a bunch of people down in Kosovo and things like that. So you weren't going to have any of those folks down there driving military vehicles. So the operations center came out and goes, you're approved to hit the target. I went, copy that. So I have 2 laser guided bombs. And if you've ever been in Europe, the weather's always kind of sketchy. So you need a clear spot to be able to drop these bombs. So I got a clear opening happening, which is perfect. So I loop back around, got my laser on the target, dropped the bombs. And right after I dropped the bombs, they have about a 30-second time of fall. At about 10 seconds into it, the operations center comes back and says, abort your attack. You're not approved to engage the target. And I went, weapons away. That's the only thing I could say. That's the only thing I could think of. What else do you say? Yeah. I don't know what else to think of or to say. And this is where I think whatever divine intervention you want to say, God or whatever it's going to be, clouds rolled in at the exact same time I was lasering the target. And the laser can bite off on the target. And the laser a laser can bite off on a cloud. So the laser actually bit off on the cloud, and the cloud dragged the laser off. So the bombs actually hit like 100 yards short of the tower. No destruction, no problem. Didn't hit anything. And I found out later from a couple guys that went in country to look at bomb damage. I asked this colonel about that specifically, and he told me that was a SAS layout. They were doing comm relays back, is what that was.
Yeah.
And so luckily, I don't know if anybody was in the little shack that was at the bottom or not, but luckily it didn't get hit.
That could have been a bad day.
It could have been a bad day. It could have been a bad day. Oof. But,
Okay. So 3 years at Aviano.
Yeah, 3 years at Aviano. I did
great time.
I did Northern Watch there also. Operation Northern Watch, I was there, and I had a lot of fun doing that too. We didn't get to drop bombs during that time frame, but we were still flying with live ordnance and missiles and all that kind of stuff. And I got to see what happens when the Iraqis launch a MiG-25 out to test us to see how we're going to respond. And it was actually pretty impressive just to see what we would do, because it's a whole plan like we've been doing for years. That was actually in 98 when I did Northern Watch. Kosovo was in 99. But Aviano was one of my best assignments and the busiest assignment. I mean, we were working 12 to 14-hour days almost every day, but it was so much fun. Yeah. I mean, the flying was great. The country was great. Never had a bad meal.
I was going to say the food and the coffee was pretty
good. Oh my gosh, the food and the coffee, it was just great. We did, we got to go to Spain, and I went to Germany a bunch, and I went over to England, I went to France, Belgium. Oh my gosh, it was so much fun.
Yes.
But I haven't been back there. I haven't been back to Europe since 2005, so I don't know if it's as much fun now.
Europe is fun.
It's
loads
of fun.
I don't know, obviously not the Air Force, but being in the Army in Europe is.
Where were you in?
Not so fun. I was stationed in Germany. I was in Baumholder.
Oh, I dropped on Hollenfels Range and Grafenwehr. Grafenwehr's the other place.
Grafenwehr and Hohenfels, the two big training centers. I spent plenty of time there too.
Vincenzo was a nice base. If you could have been down there.
My brother was stationed there.
They had the first Taco Bell in Italy.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, because as soon as we heard that their PX was getting a Taco Bell, I drove the 2 hours from Aviano just to get a Taco Bell, just because I hadn't had it in forever, and it was glorious.
War as hell.
I wouldn't.
It was great.
I wouldn't have bothered.
I mean, I've been eating great Italian food. I just want to have Taco Bell for a change.
All right. Sure. If that's what does it for you.
Yeah, But after that, Aviano was awesome, and then I got shipped to Cannon in March of 2000. And then we have to do what's called a weapons school spin up. Before you go do that 6 months of weapons school, you have to fly with the current weapons school graduate at the base you're going to, and a couple other guys that are there. They're also weapons school graduates, and they got to get you spun up to what you can expect.
A prep course.
It's like a prep.
Kind of a prep course, because you have to be what's considered a operational instructor to go to Air Force weapons school. And, so when you're an instructor in a unit, you're like, okay, I know what I'm doing. I'm pretty good at this. When you go to weapons school as an instructor, you're like, how did I even get here? I suck. That's what because now everything's at a level 9. Of the guys you're flying with are level 9. This is all they do. Mm-hmm. So you learn every single, at Air Force weapons school, you've learned every single nuance of how the airplane can be exploited. And you do tactics, or you fly tactics, or how you would actually do some combat ops with other guys that are at that same level that you could never put a normal young kid in your unit up to do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So when you get back to your unit, you got to dumb yourself back down again, because you can't expect this 23-year-old lieutenant who's got 80 hours in F-16 to be able to handle what you just did for 6 months. So I won't say that's a negative thing, but man, flying at Nellis for 6 months in the ranges up there was phenomenal, because that's all you did, because you were a pilot for 6 months. As an instructor normally, or as a leader in the squadron, you have to do grade sheets. You got to sit behind the ops desk and do other stuff for the commander.
Secondary duties.
Oh, yeah. When you go to weapons school, you're a pilot.
That's it.
For 6 months, you just fly your butt off, and they tell you how much you suck, and then they tell you when you're good. But then when you graduate and you get the patch slammed on your shoulder, that patch stays there. You don't have to swap that out when you go to a new unit, a new base. Nothing. That patch is allowed via Air Force regulation to stay, which is kind of cool.
That is pretty cool. Yeah. How common in the Air Force is that patch? All right, let me take that back. How common is that amongst pilots?
Well, I'm going to say amongst pilots, maybe 1% or so. Usually on the instructor side, you're going to have maybe 1% of the pilots in, I'll say a fighter unit, are going to be patch wearers, what we call patch wearers. So in a squadron, you might have 24, have a single seat squadron like a Raptor squadron, F-16 squadron. You're going to have probably 24 assigned pilots. That also includes your commander, the DO, the OPSO, the second in command guy, and then everybody else. You have the chief of weapons and tactics, which is what I would be as a captain. I'm the patch wearer, so I'm the one that dictates tactics to the squadron. Mm-hmm. Now the commander could also be a patch wearer, but he's not operating in the capacity as a patch wearer. He's the commander, so he has a
bigger purview.
He has a C prefix, so his command duties is what has relevance. But a lot of times your commanders and your OPSOs are probably going to be patch wearers, because they have the experience and they have that knowledge. And it doesn't mean I don't go to those guys and ask them stuff or ask questions about what things we're doing, or they'll do the same thing to me. But so I would say in the squadron, you might have 3 out of 25 that are going to be patches. And you also have a wing weapons officer, and he's going to be a patch wearer too. So, but as you go farther up the chain and you get into the command structure, you're going to see, not so much now, you're not seeing that of like the new chief of staff that's coming in to the Air Force. I don't think is even a fighter guy, which hasn't been around since, I think the last time they did it was terrible, because now you got a guy that doesn't understand tactics telling the Air Force what they need to do, which can be a problem. Like Air Force Chief of Staff 2 back, General Goldfein, Fingers is his nickname. He was at Aviano when I was at Aviano during Kosovo. And so I got a chance. He was from the other squadron. He was a squadron commander for the Triple Nickel when I was just, an assistant weapons officer in the 510th. But I got a chance to fly with him during Kosovo. I love this story. Greatest comment he ever said to me in the air. He was a FAC-A also. So I take off to get down to Kosovo. He's in the Kosovo engagement zone now, and I'm swapping out with him. So we have to do a FAC-A handover. He tells me what's going on, if you've seen anybody, any Sapphire events, people shooting or whatever else. And he says, ready to copy brief. I said, send it. And he said, words from the KAOC, Command Air Operations Center. He goes, words from the KAOC are level the village. and he gave me coordinates to this village. It was right on the border of Kosovo and I think Albania. The Serbs were shelling into Albania, which obviously they're not supposed to be doing.
Correct.
But they had basically gone into this small little village right on the border and either killed or pushed everybody out. So it's not that many buildings. It's several buildings, but not a whole bunch. So we're basically over top of this village, and this was during the day. So he said, words in the KICR, level the village. I go, stand by. In the airplane, you can record everything. And once you, what we call fence in, once you go in country, you make sure all your systems are hot. You can kick off a bomb, shoot a missile, self-protect, and we have a tape. So I can flip a switch and turn the tape on. So I looked down and made sure the tape was on because I wanted this on tape.
Yep.
And I said, say again?
Say again, over.
Does that say again? He goes, words from the KICR, level the village. I'm like, copy that, level the village. So I made sure I said it again. And he says, I'm clearing off to the north where he was going to go so he can go back home. And I started for the next hour just shuffling guys in and hitting every single building in this small little village. One building that I rolled in on to show some of the guys in to what they needed to hit, I said, stand by. I said, yeah, are you visual me? The guy goes, yeah. So he's about 2,000 feet higher than me. I said, stand by. I said, I'm in from the south, so I'm flowing south to north on this one building. And I have a targeting pod, and I got the targeting pod looking on the building to, I'd give me a good IR picture. And as I look in the IR picture, there's some dude standing on like what I call the porch of this building, who apparently has, he's small arms, AK or something, whatever it is, and he's shooting. I can tell by the flash in the IR picture.
You can see it, yeah.
That he's shooting something. And I'm like, well, I guess that's my target. You know what I mean? I'm at 20-something thousand feet. He's not going to hit me. So I roll in and put the bomb right. I see the bomb basically flies right over top of the roof of the porch and hits the building, and the building just goes away. So I assume he goes away. And I tell the flight that's in there with a bunch of bigger bombs, I said, do you see my bomb hit? They go, yeah, more visual bomb hit. I went, you are cleared hot, any direction, stay in the wheel, any building in the vicinity of that. And I climb high, and I just stay right behind them as we wipe out this entire village for 24 hours. We hit every single building in that village.
Yeah.
It was crazy. I thought that was something you'd hear from Vietnam. I didn't think I'd hear it in 1999.
Level the village.
Level the village. I was like, wow. Okay.
And he went on to become the Air Force
Chief of Staff.
Chief of Staff.
And his whole family has a lot of great family. His dad was a Korean fighter pilot. His brother was a fighter pilot, 2-star. His other brother, nickname is Grip, Goldfein. He was an 06. He might have made a star too. And then Fingers made 4 stars and was Chief of Staff of the Air Force. Entire family is. The cool thing is they were great leaders. If he wasn't going to play a game with you. He would talk to you, and if he said it, you could believe him.
Yeah.
As opposed to you guys have seen some leaders, you go, I don't believe you. I don't believe that's true, or I don't believe you can do that, or you're doing this because you're trying to get to a certain spot. So
I'm still on the leveling the village thing. So as an old, because I was an artillery guy in an infantry unit once upon a time, and I think of standardizing these operational terms because they mean something.
Oh, yeah.
So for example, if you're doing a cordon of a village with a bunch of bad people in it, and somebody starts to run and you say, get him, that might mean two very, very, very different things.
Okay.
So
we didn't use terms like squirter or anything like that.
Squirters,
Level the village is always a good one. But also when we were doing that whole operation, I was flying the day at the beginning of it is where Fingers and I were taking over that village or wiping it out. Later that evening, I had another guy from the flight that we called NORAD. That's a whole different story. But anyway, we renamed it after this event. He was flying. We had a couple guys from the Air Force Weapons School come out and fly with us during combat ops. They wanted to see how things were going because they could take that back.
Keep their tactics.
Of course.
Yeah.
So the weapons officer guy is flying with one of our captains. They're both captains, both about the same time and grade. And, in the targeting pod, you can make the picture what we call expanded, so the picture looks bigger. You can try to identify stuff bigger. Well, this one guy, they go to the village, and there's a bunch of vehicles going south to north through the village. They think we're figuring it's Serbs or whatever else trying to come back and see. We know it's not our guys. trying to see if anything else is going on. So he calls and he goes, hey, I got vehicles north, south in the village, about 20 of them. So he says, I'm rolling in from the south, and he's going to basically hit them from back to front. And so he's going to try to hit the lead vehicle and have number 2 hit the trail vehicle behind him. And so they both roll in behind, kind of a trail spot. And NORAD, soon to be renamed, rolls in, and he drops a bomb, and he hits the front vehicle. And the guy in the back, I can't remember who it was. I can see his face. But anyway, he rolls in, and he's looking in the pod, and he goes, something doesn't look right. That doesn't look, that's a vehicle? That's weird. And he doesn't drop, and he peels off. Well, it turns out NORAD had his targeting pod picture and expand, or really close. So his picture looked really big to him. And what it turned out to be, not a vehicle, it was cows going up the road, like steer. Because, there was explosions everywhere, so they were basically on the road, just one behind the other. Dun, 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 dun. So T-Bone hit the lead vehicle, and also goes, as soon as the lead cow blows up, he goes, they're scattering, they're going to the east and to the west, because their buddy died, blew him to barbecue, and everybody, all the other cows go crap, and they just all scatter. And we knew they were cattle, because the guy with them put the pod in there and can see them all. You can see the little legs going off to the side. And we had T-shirts made for that whole thing. And we had the outline of a bull off the side with a slash through it.
One kill. Confirmed him.
And we renamed him T-Bone for that sort of thing. Never let him live it down, but that was some great stuff.
So call signs can be changed at any time.
They can for buffoonery like that.
Okay. Yeah.
Normally in the Air Force, your call sign, and I know where you're going to go with this, Dan. Your call signs are given to you. Now, obviously, you don't come up with yourself. Your unit comes up with it. Usually, your first assignment in the Air Force, they will catch you do something buffoonery wise, or they hear a story, and it's always a 10% truth rule is all it has to be. Right. And the 10% usually it's you, and everything else is made up. But the rule is, if you ever drop bombs in anger, real combat ops, not doing Northern Watch, Southern Watch, those types of spinning circles. If you know kidding in combat ops and drop weapons, and you have a nickname or a call sign, it'll stay with you. So that's what you're going to have. Usually you don't like your call sign. If you do, then that'll usually cause it to be changed. But right. Or if you've ever flown in at least 3 commands with your call sign, you get to keep it. So when we had during Kosovo, I got Digger. I'll explain it, Dan. Just hang on.
He's champing at the bit over here.
I know he is. I can see him. He's just like wiping himself. I got Digger at Kunsan as lieutenant, but I was a guard guy. I had a bunch of hours. I was like 26 or 27 at the time. And so I had now been in Pacific Air Forces. I had come from the National Guard Bureau side of the house, and now I'm in Usairforce. And so I've now dropped bombs in anger. 3 commands. And then I still up going to Air Combat Command, so I end up having 4. But I drop bombs in anger, so I get to keep that. So, but because T-Bone had caused buffoonery during combat, we got to rename him to T-Bone. Now, for me, being Digger, my Christian name is Gravedigger, Digger for short. So I knew they were going to try to name me, and I thought I was being really clever, but not to give out any information or not to do anything stupid. Mm-hmm. During my time there, they you usually get a name within the first 2 months that you're there too. So I'm at the gym with one of the guys, and we're talking about stuff. You're at a remote base, and you're missing your wife, your significant other, and everything else. So, of course, a lot of times that's the topic that comes up. Mm-hmm. And he asked me a question. I can't remember what it was, and turns out, in my younger years, which wasn't very much during that time, in my early 20s, I had a tendency to try to snag somebody that was older. And I'm not talking significantly older, but older. And
experienced.
Yeah, experienced. But he asked me, he goes, well, what kind of gap are you talking about here? And I said, when I was 25, she was 47. And he goes, oh my gosh, that's crazy, blah, blah, blah. I said, well, she had a 23-year-old daughter, but I could never make that work. But anyway, and he thought it was funny. And that was in the conversation. I went, okay, cool, blah, blah, blah. And then we come to the nameage time. And of course, the 10% truth rule came out. Okay, it is you, but we heard that you were going to graveyards and digging up people's dead grandmothers and having relations with their dead grandmothers. So it came really close.
There's no competition.
Oh my gosh, they came really close to calling me necro. And I'm thinking to myself, because you're on a stage, you're on a stage, and we're in town, a place called A-Town, just north of Kunsan. And they're like, well, let's call it necro. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, please don't call me necro. Please don't. And then somebody goes, grave digger. That'd be great. Grave digger. We'll call him digger. I'm like, oh, I could do that one.
Yeah.
You know
okay.
what I mean? Whew. So now, a lot of times people ask me, like, how'd you get digger? I'm like, it's short for grave digger. And then I leave it at that. And then they're
That's
like,
so
whoa,
cool.
what does that mean? I went, it's a long story. Did you like dig graves in college and blah, 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 blah? I'm like, no, I picked my nose a lot. That's what I would end up saying. And then I just walk away.
Deflect.
You know,
all because you weren't robbing the cradle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And now I am. My wife's 13 years younger than me, but I'm 56 and she's 42. So she's already turned 43. That's not bad. As long as you don't think about when she was born in 81, I was born in 67. And she took a picture and put this on Facebook of me when I was 19 going through like technical school. You know, I was still wearing OD greens. So I was in technical school, and then she had a picture. This was of her next to it, you know. So in 87, I'm 19. And
she's in kindergarten?
She's 6, 7. She had just turned 7 or whatever. I went, really? You're going to post that on Facebook? She goes, yeah, I think it's funny.
Wow.
Oh, gosh.
More shots fired.
Exactly.
All right, so back to Canon.
Canon itself was a different animal. The base itself, you had 4 squadrons there. You had a Taiwanese squadron that did training there, and then you had 3 ops squadrons. And 9/11 happened while I was there.
Yep.
And I had just finished, obviously I finished weapons school in the fall of 2000. So September 2001, we were on a night schedule, flying at night. And so I didn't have to be at work till like 2 in the afternoon. So I got up, it's about, I don't know, maybe 7:30 or 8:30 or so Canon time. And I go to the coffee shack, drive-through coffee shack, just get some coffee. And as I'm at the coffee shack, I have the radio on, and they announced that the World Trade Center has been hit. And I'm like, what? You know, and I'm grabbing the coffee at the same time. And I'm like, did you just hear the World Trade Center just got hit by the girl in the coffee shop? She goes, yeah, it's all over the news. And so I did a donut in the parking lot to get back to my place so I could turn the TV on. I turned the TV on, and I right in the second plane hit the other tower. And I went, oh my gosh. And it's still just thinking about it sends chills up my spine, just watching it on TV. Mm-hmm. I immediately look in my closet for my kind of my go bag sort of thing. You guys, I'm sure, had that sort of stuff, whatever you need immediately to go. And then probably within 20 minutes, my phone rang, and it was my DO. And he says, you've been watching the news? I said, yep, watching the news. I said, do I need to come in now? He says, nope. He goes, don't come in yet. He goes, wait till I call you. I said, do I need to bring my go bag? He goes, no, not yet. And he said, I'll have more later. He said, but don't plan on leaving. I said, okay. Don't plan on leaving the squadron, because you leave the house, you're not coming back for a little bit. I said, all right. So that's when the whole world changed. I mean, it changed how we got on the base. Mm-hmm. Getting on the base was terrible because everything's backed up. They put a lane in specifically for air crew because now we're sitting alert. Mm-hmm. I get to the squadron probably 3 in the afternoon, and I look on the taxiway, which is about 2 miles long. They have every single airplane that they can generate lined up on the taxiway. So anywhere from 75 to 80 F-16s fully loaded with air-to-air weapons lined up on the taxiway. And I'm like, I had never thought in 1,000 years I'd be sitting alert in my own country. So we go into the squadron, and they're like, okay, this is what's going on. This is what we know. We're going to be talking to NORAD. We're going to be talking to the guys in the Western Air Defense Sector. And if we have to shoot down an airplane, they're going to give us clearance. If we can't, and the airplane is going to be going into a populated area. We were worried about Albuquerque at the time, and not so much Lubbock, but Albuquerque or going toward Dallas. So they said, does anybody have a problem with having to shoot down a civilian airliner? We're like, well, you know.
It's not on my list.
It's not. I don't want to shoot one down, but so now the tactic came, how we're going to do it. Mm. Take out a motor. Do we strafe the cockpit? What are we going to do? How do we make it get down the quickest? So we talked about that sort of stuff. And then we're all on 5-minute runway alert. So I'm standing out next to the airplane with my crew chief, just looking up in the sky. And this is after Bush shut down the FAA.
Yep.
And shut down all the flying for ATC. And we're standing, I'm talking to my crew chief, a young kid, and I can't remember his name, unfortunately, but we're looking up in the sky. And there in Cannon is where all the traffic basically come from the West Coast is going to Dallas. And there's not a single airplane in the sky. It's just stars. And it was the weirdest thing in the world. I mean, you're thinking, okay, this is apocalypse. This is what's going to happen, sort of thing. And I'm just like, I never in 1,000 years thought this would be what we're doing. And we didn't get launched that night, thankfully. But then we had to start doing Noble Eagle, or what they call Operation Noble Eagle, and flying combat air patrols over Albuquerque. And we got notified. The commander says, hey, I got a call. I got to go talk to the wing commander. We're going to get deployed. I went, giddy up, because we already knew that the special ops guys were going. We're already headed over toward Afghanistan. I went, great, let's go. We can take care of this. And he comes back. I'm the weapons officer. Of course, I'm freaking pumped on let's do this. And he goes, I said, we're getting deployed. He goes, yep. He goes, you're going to be advon. I went, great. Who can I take with me? He goes, take this person, this person. I said, I want to take this person too, for some other skills that they had. And he goes, all right. He goes, you're going to go to Carswell, at the time Carswell Air Force Base, which is Joint Base Dallas-Fort Worth now, whatever, NAS base. I go, what are we going there for? He goes, we're going to set alert there. He goes, the SPADs, the 425th Fighter Squadron, is going to Afghanistan. That's a reserve unit. We're active duty. I'm like, what? I said, we're going to fill in for a reserve unit that's going to Afghanistan, active. They're going to be activated? He goes, yeah. I go, are you kidding me? I thought that's what we were here for.
Yeah.
So we end up going to NAS Joint Base Fort Worth and sitting alert there and flying combat air patrols over Dallas, Fort Worth, and also watching over Crawford Ranch. So we did a couple of intercepts on drunk dudes trying to fly into the area around Bush's house, some goofy stuff like that. I did watch a football game through the targeting pod, doing patrol over top of the field there in Arlington, which was kind of cool. Not I could tell who was who. I was too high, and I get to see people running around.
It was the Cowboys losing.
I'm sure it was, because I've been a Cowboys fan. My son is, but I don't really care. But anyway, the cool thing about that was the general on the base said, whatever you guys need, we'll get it for you. We're like, well, we need a hotline. And he goes, got it. He goes, that's on the way anyway. We'd like to have, better TV. We're just throwing everything out there. So we got cable. We're in these Garth Brooks type motorhomes that are just awesome. And so he gets us cable TV and all this other stuff. And they put a klaxon alarm out there or whatever else, and we made the best of it. And we were rotating in and out of there for like 2 or 3 months to do that while the SPADs were doing our job, which was a little kick in the throat. But a year later, we went to Southern Watch, and then I was there for day one of Iraqi freedom. So that's how that went.
Well, let's talk about that.
I was just trying to think. I was advon for that. When we finally said we're going to go to Southern Watch, which we were going to be out of Kuwait, I'm like, okay, we're going to go to Southern Watch. All this other stuff's heating up. We'll always kick stuff off in the spring, so we're going to be there for a while. And I always got, if you guys are the same maybe, I always get deployed usually around the holidays. So advon, I leave December 7th, and now I'm gone until May, is what it ends up being. So December 7th, 2002, and we go out there, and the triple nickels out there from Aviano. So I know some of the guys that are there.
Yeah.
Of course, they know I'm a 5/10 guy from previous life. They also know I'm the patch wearer. So they're giving me a bunch of grief about that. But they let me fly with them some before my unit got there, before our guys got there. So I actually got to fly with them on a couple of missions for Southern Watch. And during Southern Watch, they would do things called response options. If there's some sort of Sapphire event that the Iraqis did or something like that, we'd go and hit something just to say, hey, we're still watching you, blah, blah, blah.
It's a show of force.
Yeah, that's all it is. But we couldn't do anything really big. We were hitting like some sort of comm piece or something like that.
You've mentioned it a couple of times now.
Yeah.
But what is a Sapphire event?
Oh, it's like when they shoot artillery at known friendlies, or they shoot a Scud, or there's some sort of radar engagement or something like that. Anything that's going to be seen as a threat
From surface to
from
air.
surface to air. And it can be surface to surface too, because it's anything that they're noticing that could be an effect. Them shooting at stuff into Iran, which they don't, shooting stuff into Jordan or shooting into Syria, whatever they can do, or Turkey or something like that, can be considered a Sapphire event. So it's, I get there and I'm flying. My first mission, I flew with a triple nickel for Southern Watch. They have, when you're flying, you have a certain routing you fly, and then if there's a response option, they will say, hey, we're exercising response option 1, and it says what you're supposed to do in a little smart pack. And so we're all carrying ordnance, but I'm number 4 since I'm not part of the squadron. And they said, okay, Digger, you're not dropping. You're going to be the camera guy is what they call me. So I just have to film everything with a targeting pod. I watch these other 3 guys drop, and I just have to fill it. I got to film it with the targeting pod. I'm like, that's all cool. These guys, got some young guys on the wings and stuff like that, so let those guys drop, get the experience, It wasn't too often at that time that you had somebody that had combat experience, like from Kosovo, full on air-to-air or an air engagement stuff, and then go into what we know is going to be another full-on fight, sort of thing. So...
Well, I mean, they were only a few years apart.
Exactly. Almost 4 years to the day. Almost 4 years to the day is what it was. And so we had a couple guys in my unit, that had combat experience. The DO was actually an original A-10 Gulf War pilot who actually took a round through the canopy when he was flying. It hit behind him. He took a little bit of shrapnel to the face or whatever, but the round hit behind him. And he said after that happened, he said he flew and leaned his helmet back to where the hole was, because he figured, what's the chance of another bullet going right through that same hole? So, so that was...
And it was a little breezy.
Yeah, it was a little breezy, but he had to go back and land. But anyway, so when my unit got there, we started doing what I considered, shaping of the battlefield, getting ready, because we knew things were going to happen. We watched the Army and the Marine guys pushing up along the border from Kuwait toward Iraq, and knowing they were going to bust through, but we didn't know exactly when. But when that whole thing kicked off, right before it kicked off, probably I'm going to say in February, the Iraqis were driving this SA-8 surface-to-air missile system around. Yep. We can fully mobile. And I was at the operations center doing my 1-week tour, as the F-16, liaison officer. And I'm watching the Predator, at the time, not even a Reaper video, Predator video of this SA-8 driving down south within 80 miles of the Kuwait border, well south of the latitude you're allowed to be. And it's a weapon system. I'm like, and we're flying stuff up there, back and forth. And, of course, I'm yelling at the TV. I'm like, why aren't we launching somebody on this? This is a threat. Why aren't we doing something about it? And then the JAG officer comes by.
Oh, boy.
Stands next to me. She goes, well, there's a school about 1,500 yards to the northeast, and where that thing is parked is as a 13th century mosque. It has 3 walls, no ceiling. It's just dirt walls. I don't know how they consider that a mosque, but apparently it was a mosque. And the guy who's the colonel, I'm a senior captain, get ready to make major. The colonel that runs the floor actually was a guy that I had flown with a Kuntz on. He hears me just losing it with the JAG officer, and I see him stand up from his chair, and he's like, just calm down. And so I sit down and just, hold my breath. Of course, and I've been here since the beginning of December, missed the holidays, talking to my kids via middle of the night phone call if I'm lucky. And so I'm getting a little salty. So I come back, and this is right before the war kicks off. I'm sitting alert. We had set alert at Kuwait. They had the Iraqis were still flying what we called the Baghdad to Basra shuttles, like a 737. Yep. They would fly to and from. I don't think anybody was on it, but they did it every single day, same time. And we would always get launched to go and look at it. Now, we couldn't cross the border to go intercept it because that's considered a hostile sort of thing. So we go right up to the border, and we put the targeting pod at it to see if maybe they had dropped in a fighter underneath of it or something like that, trying to kind of fly in close.
Trying to masking.
Exactly.
Yep.
So we get launched, and right before I'm going, the intel guy comes and says, hey, you actually getting launched for a target. I'm going, where's the target? He gives me the location. He gives me a quick little picture of it. I go, I know exactly where that is. And so it's an SA-8. So we climb up, cross into the country. There's a Predator on station already looking at it. And the guy who is flying the Predator is talking to me on the radio. And he says, I got an SA-8. It's inside a 3-building wall. And I said, I know exactly where it is. And I said, which wall is it up against? He says, it's on the western side, north wall. I said, I know exactly what it is or where it is. And so I had my targeting pod looking at it. I got two laser guided 500-pound bombs. And so I'm rolling up and I'm looking at it. And I do a quick little, I'm high altitude, so they don't really know that I'm there or care. So I see it and I spin back around. I said, confirm, I'm clear to engage this. They went, Roger that, you're clear to engage. And so I roll back around and I'm looking in the targeting pod and it's like 5 dudes like in front of it. It's like they couldn't get, like it wouldn't start. That's what I thought of, because one guy had just hopped out of
That's
it.
all Army's saying.
I could see it, and I saw it later in the Predator video, which was kind of cool. So I can see dudes standing in front of it and some guy walking up to it. And laser guided, 500-pound laser guided bomb for me at my altitude that I was dropping it 5 miles away. So I drop it and then I turn, laser target, and those things make remember those footballs that you could throw like 100 yards?
That whistle?
That whistle?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Nerf balls with the tail on it and everything.
Yeah, if you guys been on the ground and heard those bombs make that whistling sound. But by the time you hear the whistle, it's too late.
Yeah. It's the ones you don't hear.
Yeah. So I dropped both these bombs in right on top of this SA-8, and it just cooks off. And as I'm looking in the pod, I call a shack, and then all of a sudden you see one of the missiles go screaming off across the desert because it lit one of those things off. And they went, copy. I said shack. The Predator guy goes shack, and I went, I'm heading back. They went, great. I landed, and the air group commander, a deployed group commander, meets me at the airplane. I'm like, oh, this is kind of weird.
That's usually not a good
No,
thing.
it's a good thing. And I hopped down. He goes, Digger, that was a great hit. I went, thanks, sir. I appreciate it. I figured he just heard the call and knew what it was. And I went, I appreciate it. And I get back to the mission planning center where they had Predator feed. And my intel guy says, Digger, you got to come look at the Predator feed. They had Predator feed on there while you hit the target. I go, no kidding. He goes, yeah, they piped it into the mass briefing room. Everybody was in there watching it.
And cheering.
Yeah, they said because it was all in color. And that's when I saw the guy walking up to it, and the guy had jumped out. Like they were just standing around like, like it wouldn't start.
They're American GI, so 4 of them are smoking cigarettes, and one of
Just
them's actually
there.
trying to fix it.
So they said that they could hear all my radio calls, weapons away, and this and the other. And then when the bombs hit, and they got the Predator feed up there, and the thing just cooks off. They said it was like a Super Bowl touchdown in the briefing room. They said everybody was like, yeah, screaming and yelling. And I was like, that's why the group commander come up to me and said it was a good hit. So, and that was before the war kicked off. So that was actually one of my, besides one mission, that was probably one of the most fun missions I had. We did a lot of other stuff there. I was awarded as Distinguished Flying Cross with a Valor device about 2 or 3 days into the war. The Army and the Marines are pressing northbound. Mm-hmm. And they were going to be in Baghdad within 36 hours at least.
Yep.
And the F-16 has a secure radio that we almost never used. We used half-quick a lot. But we had a secure radio that you could talk, secret comms on if you needed to. So I take off, me and my wingman, we take off, and once we get airborne, we're talking to the radar plane, and they said, contact Kmart, which is like the 2-star level at the operations center, if I remember right. And they said, contact Kmart on Blue 69, whatever. I'm like, so I'm looking in the smart pack for what frequency is Blue 69.
We don't use this.
I haven't used that one before. And I look at it, and it says secure, secure, I think it was a Victor radio, secure this. And I go, hey, are you showing, Blue 69 to be secure, blah, blah, blah? He goes, yeah, I'm showing the same thing. I went, let's see how this works. Because we hadn't used it. We hadn't used it yet at all. And it's supposed to be encrypted, encoded, ready to go. So I call the radio up and I key it, and it does this little tone thing to let you know that you're talking secure. And I call up Kmart and whatever my call sign was. I'm like, hey, Kmart, Digger 12's with you. What's going on? And they called me back. And I couldn't believe I could talk to them. They went, you are redirected to Baghdad International Airport to hit any military vehicles, vessels, equipment, or anything that you find.
Targets of opportunity.
Targets of opportunity on the airfield that are military, that you can identify as military. I went and I set it back to confirm that what I was saying. I went,
Turn
okay.
the recorder on again.
Did you turn the
Make sure
recorder
it's
on?
on. Make sure the record's on. But I said, okay, copy that. And so we start pressing up to, at the time I think they called it Saddam International Airport. We were calling it Baghdad. So I get up there and I'm circling the airport, me and my wingman. And nobody's in there yet. None of the dudes on the ground are in the green zone yet.
Yep.
And I'm looking at that Basra to Baghdad 737 is parked at the terminal. No other airplanes out on the terminal. And I went, the runways are completely cut. The B-2 came through and dropped all their weapons.
Yeah, it's in op.
Yeah, the airplane's not going to be able to take off. So I went, they can't go driving into anything. So I can't count that I wouldn't count that as a military target because they can't fly it. It's done. So I'm looking for UAVs or any sort of trucks, and vehicles. And we found some. And we found some vehicles, and that looked kind of like fighting vehicles of some sort, and they had scattered them. They tried to put them next to trees and stuff to give them some sort of camouflage. So I dropped on one and hit it. I called it a tank, but it was probably like a fighting vehicle. It wasn't like a huge bore barrel on the front of it, but it had a barrel on it. And so I hit that, and then I dig out another target, but I let my wingman come around and drop his bomb too because, we're both carrying bombs. And I said, you see where my bomb hit? He goes, yep. I said, there's another vehicle. There's some other vehicles in there. See if you can tag on those other ones. I'm going to cover you. So whenever one of us was dropping, the other guy had to look outside. So we always stayed in some sort of circle most of the time so we can look around. One guy's looking at the ground, looking in his pod. The other guy's looking around everywhere else for threats. Either surface to air. We weren't expecting anybody to fly air to air at all because we already knew they weren't going to fly with us. So I already have my next target locked in on my targeting pod while I'm following him around because I'm like, okay, I got that set up great. I'm on him and I'm flying back behind him a little bit. And he goes, I got a target. I'm in from the west. I said, copy that. And so I stay behind him, look for targets. And then all of a sudden he says, weapons away, about a 25-second drop. And all of a sudden my target blows up. I go, you son of a bitch. I said that on the radio. I went, oh.
With all due respect.
Yeah, he was a lieutenant, So anyway.
Oh, so no respect.
Yeah, it was
none given. Yes.
That's right. Because he'd never flown in combat. We had combat wingmen. Guys had more experience and paired up with other guys. So, I'm like, dude, that was my target. And I'm just because it's
Adrenaline.
It's adrenaline. He started laughing. He goes, sorry. And then as I'm turning back around, I find a storage tank, like a fuel storage tank. They had burned up around it. I went, okay, that's a good IED sort of thing to set up right alongside of a road because there was a road going alongside of it. So I went, okay. So I got a storage tank standby. So I've rolled around and dropped a bomb on this fuel storage thing. And it cooks off. Man, it was a lot. There was a lot of fuel in there, and that thing cooks off. Some secondaries. And as I'm pulling back up and I'm going to the right, I see what I think to be a harm shot going over top of me because, they have the little contrail coming from it. I've seen those before. And I'm thinking, my immediate thought was, the Spain guys were there. I'm like, who in hell just shot a harm right over top of me? And then at the exact same moment, my Kosovo thing kicked in because I had a lot of stuff shot at me. And I went, that was a SAM launch. And I immediately go hard right. And at the same time, my 28-year-old wingman now sounds like Minnie Mouse, starts screaming, SAM launch, SAM launch, SAM launch. I went, I know. So I'm going hard right, kicking out chaff and flare. They're not using radar again. They saw us visually, and they shot. And this is just to the southwest of Baghdad. Was where they were shooting from. And then as soon as I do this hard left, and this thing goes by me, I see it detonate. I tell my wingman, I say, look to the left, because it's an old Russian tactic sort of thing. They try to get you looking one way, and then they try to hit you from the other side.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
So I go hard right this way, and I tell my wingman to look left. As soon as we both look left, here comes the second one, screaming by, shooting at us visually again. And then we get a bunch of information that there is AAA downtown Baghdad. Well, guess where I am? I'm downtown Baghdad. So I went, it's daytime. I can't see it, Yeah. I went, copy that. And I said, we got second missile launch. And then I'm yelling at my wingman to go south because now we're split. and the Iraqis there started burning some of the oil that was around the city,
Yeah.
the mass stuff. So a lot of smoke. So my wingman can't see me, and I'm like, dude, just flow south, and here comes 2 more missiles coming up toward our direction. They're not going to be close to us though. And he's still screaming missile launch again, SAM launch again, and he goes, SAM launch, but I don't know where you are. That's all he said. The normal comm is 2's blind. But when you're got the adrenaline going, you just throw out trucker comm, whatever you can say. He goes, I don't know where you are. And then it's like, flow south, fly south, fly south.
So your wingman was not exactly graceful under pressure?
No, but he did. After that, he had plenty of experience because I think he did Afghanistan later on down his career.
Under the call sign Minnie Mouse?
No. Actually, we named him, we named him Skeet. And I can't remember why we named him Skeet. He's retired 06 now. So it's just funny. He was a lieutenant with me. But we flew all of our missions together, which is actually pretty cool. But, we survived it. But your Army stuff, and I'm not blaming this on you guys. We had an Army GLOW major that was in our mission planning area.
Which is the GLOW?
The GLOW. The Army GLOW was in there, who was supposed to give us insight on what the Army was doing,
It's your
where they
ground
were.
liaison officer.
Yeah, sorry. Just figured you'd know that one. But anyway.
I do. The audience doesn't.
Oh, true. Sorry. But anyway, so the GLOW, and now I realize what type of person that the Army will put as the GLOW. It's this Army major who wouldn't be able to pass even an Air Force PT test. He's supposed to keep us updated on troop movements and what's going on and what's happening. And I think it was on this mission, my wingman and I are flowing south, and then I'm in the area where I know the Marines and the Army guys are flowing north.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I see all these launches right toward Baghdad.
Yeah.
And it's MLRS. I know it's MLRS. My wingman doesn't know it. He goes, I see multiple SAM launches. I said, dude, flow south. I said, I'm pretty sure that's blue. Leave it. That's blue. And so they probably launched at least 100 of those things. I get back on the ground, and I go over to the GLOW, and I went, hey, does the Army have, they got an MLRS launch area around this area right here? Because it wasn't on the map. It wasn't on his big map that shows where everybody's supposed to be going.
Yeah.
So he goes, I don't think so, but I'll check into it. I went, yeah. I said,
How about now?
How about now? Because I just said I saw a bunch of MLRS, rocket launcher shots from this spot, a bunch, northbound. And I said, my wingman wanted to roll in on it. And he goes, okay, I'll check into it. No kidding. Within 30 minutes, there's now this big chute container drawn on the map with a grease pencil. I went, really, dude? And he also didn't tell me that they were pulling in Patriot systems. The Army was dragging Patriot systems in.
Yeah.
I guess maybe for Scuds or whatever else, because they weren't flying air-to-air stuff. But the Army Patriot system affects my airplane as a threat. When they turn the radar on, it gives me a threat indication. I won't go into what the threat is because I'm sure that's probably secret, but it gives me a threat indication. And we didn't know they had dragged those in there. So I'm pressing northbound. I get this specific radar surface-to-air missile threat indication, and I'm right above the cloud, so I can't see if something shoots at me. So I'm jinking left, right, looking to see if there's a missile getting ready to come through the clouds. And it goes away. I went, okay, good. Went away. Didn't happen again. I come back. I'm telling Intel, we have to give them what happens during the mission.
Debriefing.
The whole debrief. What weapon we dropped? Threats? We kicked out any chaff and flare for threats, whatever else. And I said I had this indication. So he took it back and found out from the Army GLOW that the Army had dragged Patriots in. And our Intel guy says, that's something you have to tell us.
Yeah.
And it turns out that at one point there was a harm shot at a Patriot by another Air Force unit because it came on and it showed up an indication of that threat. And, it was a valid hit, but invalid for being a good guy.
Right.
Good guy. And didn't kill any. It wasn't a frat or anything like that. It just killed the missile radar. But it was not good. That was not a good thing.
It's a fog of war.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that and probably some people that maybe aren't doing their job properly.
A
Yeah.
little bit of communication stuff because it still turned out to be a lot of, hey, the Marine Corps, the MEF's going to do this over here. The Army's going to do some of this stuff. Air Force uses guys just fly. We'll call you when we need you sort of mentality.
Yeah.
Is what it, I mean.
A lot of that hasn't changed.
No,
Yeah.
you know, and there's a lot of other little things happening from
yeah.
other spots and stuff like that were going on that a lot of us didn't have insight to.
I mean,
you know.
this is the first massive
yeah.
military operation, combined forces and
Since we did it previously 11 years ago.
over a decade.
Yeah.
So-
I mean, I guess we're really honestly lucky we didn't lose more to some sort of blue on blue stuff than what had happened. The Kuwaitis were a little trigger happy to shoot Patriots, stuff coming across their border. Unfortunately, they took down a friendly, not a U.S. aircraft, they took down a friendly aircraft with a Patriot. And because, you have systems that let ATC know that you're good or that you're friendly or they don't know who you are. And you'd have to turn that on. You'd have to have that system on and running until you're within a certain line of the border. And guys are doing it in accordance with the rules of engagement and the procedures.
Yeah.
And they still got shot down.
Because you've talked about the ground forces and surface to air missile systems and stuff like that, but what sort of opposition was there from, if any, of Iraqi air forces?
Iraqi air forces didn't fly at all, and I think my understanding is they might have had a little bit of confusion in some of the information that was given to them, because we delivered what we call delivered the mail a lot before the war kicked off. We're dropping
shaping operations.
Yes.
Yeah, we're dropping stuff that says, "Hey, capitulate," or "This is what's going to happen to you," sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I think one of the messages said, "Don't fly, or we're going to bury your Air Force," or something to that effect, is what it would mean in English. But I guess in what's the language?
Something was lost in translation.
Was lost in translation. That's why we end up digging like a MiG-25 out of the sand, because it's in the bunker and they just covered it with sand.
Because the message they got was bury your Air Force.
Yeah, exactly. So
Hey, our effects were still achieved. Okay.
I guess it's true.
just made it harder for us to get them.
That's true.
But that's what they ended up burying. Now they did have some that they didn't drag inside. I hit the end of one airfield in the northern part of Iraq. I could still see an SU. I think it was a fitter sitting on the ground, but it could have just been not operational, whatever else.
Yeah.
They were like, let them waste a bomb on that thing or whatever else, But I didn't target it. I was sitting the runway at the time, so they didn't fly at all. They didn't have. I wasn't even aware they even tried to fly any sort of helo or UAS or anything at all. We owned the entire sky the entire time.
I think they'd learned their lesson from the previous decade.
Yeah.
Well, one would think, but yet they were still out there, blind firing surface to air stuff. So
Yeah, they were shooting plenty of missiles and shooting a lot of AAA. And
I suppose a missile is cheaper than a plane.
yeah, probably so. And they probably had a bunch of them like, well, just get rid of these, but they knew again not to turn on the radars because they knew they were going to get shot at with a harm. The Iranians were shadowing us a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
They obviously stayed in their own country, but at one time I'm flying up the eastern side of Iraq, bordering Iran. I'm trying to stay out of some areas where I know there's some threats. So I'm going up the eastern side, and the whole place is covered in clouds. So the AWACS plane, the radar plane says you have Iranian fighters shadow, and it gave me a bullseye position, where they were. And they were basically just following me up the coast, and then they were up the border, and then they were just doing a large cap up there, just follow me. They never tried to lock us up with radar or anything like that, because that's an international incident. They knew if they did that, they'd get shot at.
During the first Gulf War, the sand and sandstorms were a real issue for aircraft of all forms and pretty much all vehicles. This is now, over a decade later. Were those issues still there?
Yes and no. I mean, you still had operations. You were still going to fly. The only time we had one big sandstorm, a really big sandstorm, come through Kuwait when I was there. This was during ops were happening, and I wasn't flying at that moment. I was flying in the morning, and I go out to the airplane, and they have sunshades over them, keep the inside from getting too hot, so you can't touch stuff. But I go out there, and the wind and everything had blown some of the covers off the airplanes to keep sand out of them. So we had lost some covers, and I'm walking up to my airplane, the airplane I'm going to fly, and it's loaded with weapons and everything, and I don't see the crew chief. And I'm like, I wonder where the chief is. So I'm looking at the forms, doing all my stuff. And then all of a sudden I see his feet coming out of the intake of the airplane. Because, they climb down the intake and look at the motor and stuff as part of their checks. But he's down there because he's got to get sand out. And I'll walk to the front of the airplane, and he's trying to scooch himself back with his arms like this, dragging all this sand with him. Like, like a kid on the beach. Oof. Like he's pulling the sand out. And he's doing this a bunch. And he goes, we lost the intake cover during that sandstorm. He goes, I'm trying to get as much as I can out. I'm like, okay. I said, how much you think is actually in there? He goes, I don't know. God, I can't tell. He goes, I'm getting all what I can see. I said, how do you think the engine's going to do when I crank this? He goes, honestly, I don't know what's going to happen. I said, well, I guess we'll see what happens when we start up. Oof. Started up, didn't have any problem. The only other time the sandstorm affected me, and this was a tough one. We kind of talked about this a little bit. And the Army was pressing north, and they were either just before or just outside of Toledo.
I know. That's where I was in Toledo.
Just north or just south of Toledo going northbound. And there was a big sandstorm coming through. And I'm in there flying. I can see it. And we try to stay out of them just because, it's abrasive. You don't want it in your airplane if you can help it. Yeah. But I didn't have any specific target, and I was supposed to be going to a kill box area and contacting a ground fac or, a JFO or somebody to talk to me about what's in the area. And as I'm heading to that area, to that one kill box, the radio pipes up on, I don't know if it was on the Warhawk Freak, which was the Army. What's the guys that can filter air to the guys in the ground? The Army side.
Your joint fires and
it was it was like the ASOC. It was like the ASOC. Yeah. I was talking to the ASOC, and then somebody piped up on the radio and started screaming for help. We need help. We've been attacked, or we need help.
It's like troops in contact.
Yeah, sort of thing. Yeah. But he didn't say all the verbiage like you would if somebody who knew how to talk on the radio.
Troops in contact. Yeah.
So he was basically screaming on the radio, and he threw out a grid. Well, I'm like, great, I can work with a grid. But he said like whatever the grid. He's like Quebec, and you missed that, and then 6 numbers. Well, the areas only had 2 areas that were Quebec, whatever. And so one was way up northeast on the Iranian border. And I went, okay, I'm pretty sure it's not there. The other one tagged out near Toledo. I went, okay, it's got to be that one. As I put all that into my system, and my systems goes, it's right over there, and it's in the sandstorm. But I got some dude screaming for help, and I don't know what the help is. Apparently got jumped or whatever else. And I'm like, I tell my wingman, I'm like, Skeet, I tell him, I'm like, go back and trail about 3 miles, take a radar lock on me. I'm going down, see if I can see this thing. He goes, all right. So I fly into the sandstorm, and I'm trying to call this kid back on the radio. And I got other guys. There was an F-14 guy who heard it also, and he's trying to get the guy to respond. And then I don't know if it was Warhawk or the ASOC guys. They were also asking, but I keep trying to pimp this guy, and nothing else is said. So I drop down into the sandstorm and go to where this point is on the ground. And I don't know what's there. I just know it's near Toledo because I have a map that shows that. And I can't get to where I can see the ground. The sandstorm's all the way to the surface, of course. So I go down about 3,000 to 2,000 feet above the ground, and I can't see the ground. It's just orange. Everything's orange because I'm in a sandstorm. So now I'm getting like, okay, this is not smart. This is dangerous because if somebody wants to just shoot into the sky, they could hit me. So I climb back up, get out of the sandstorm, and I asked my wingman if he saw anything. He goes, no. I said, I could never see the ground. He goes, I couldn't see it either. So we stay out of the sandstorm above it, and then keep trying to call the kid back. And to pretty much we get low on fuel, and then we fly back. Yep. And I've reported that back to Intel, and then Intel comes back and tells me probably the next day that it was one of the small convoys got hit. The FAC who owned the radio had been hit. He couldn't talk. The dude next to him, who was probably like an FO or something, grabbed the radio and screamed for help that way. He was killed. So I went, dude, that sucks.
They were probably on MSR Tampa. That's
I'm assuming. I didn't know all the spots that you guys are running through, but 4 of those guys died. I don't know.
Well, they would have been on the road.
Yeah, they were on the road. They got, I don't know if it was IED or got jumped or ambushed or whatever else. But the one dude who was sitting next to the radio, who again I'm guessing was probably an FO, because he knew to throw out a grid. I'm assuming Joe Army guy would not know how to throw out a grid.
Yeah,
Do they know how to do it too?
Yeah.
But the guy
I'm not saying that they would do it well, but they know how to do it.
This kid did it. And he obviously sounded young, and you could hear the adrenaline in his voice. I got jumped, but 4 guys in that convoy I know died, and I don't know if it was a kid that was on the radio or not, but it was just kind of made me a little sick to the stomach because that's what I was there for.
It's real.
I mean, my whole business at that point of the fight was to make sure that the Army and Marine guys got northbound and got to where they needed to go. But they still had to push through, even with the sandstorm. Yeah. But we couldn't support them.
Yeah.
And it just kind of sucked, But that kind of stuff unfortunately happens, you know.
Yeah.
But, so on a fun note, there you go.
So how long did you end up staying there? I mean, you got there Advon. You were there like 3 months ahead of time.
I got there because we were going to do Southern Watch, but we knew that the war was going to kick off and whatever they were going to call it. We knew it was going to happen. So I got there beginning of December of 2002, and I left at the end of April, beginning of May of 2003. And when I left there, I had made major, and then I was being reassigned to Nellis to be an operational test pilot. So now I got to go and fly still the F-16 and go and drop bombs just to see how well they worked with new software and all that kind of cool stuff, which is actually kind
playing
of
with all the new toys,
and
all the new
Vegas.
stuff, and Vegas too. So I lived there. I lived in Vegas for a while, but all the new toys, all the new software stuff that was coming out, brand new for the F-16. We would test it and then push it out down the line, for the guys in the field to use. Anything
that you can tell us about that was particularly?
We tested the GBU-38, the 500-pound joint direct munitions. So we tested the 500-pound GPS guided munition before it was in the field, and it was pushed through in 30 days. We went, we got to get this ready. We got to do it. The Strike Eagle guys, because in my unit there for the test side, we had F-15Es, we had F-15C, we had the Raptors, F-22s, we had A-10s, and we had F-16s. So the Strike Eagles and the F-15Es and us, F-16s, were doing rapid 500-pound GPS-guided munitions tactics to push it out immediately. And so that's when you started seeing all that stuff out there.
Was there a particular reason for the
low collateral damage and pinpoint drops?
Yeah, it's just more accurate.
Okay.
Yeah.
The accuracy on a JDAM is great, but they were starting to worry about we were carrying a lot of 2,000-pound bombs, and the Navy carries 1,000-pound bombs.
And I mean, that area of the world is very, very old, and there's a lot of historical stuff, and the U.S., more so than probably any other nation in the world, is very sensitive about hitting cultural or historical significant sites.
Oh yeah.
So
yeah. It was good. It was good to pinpoint a target without as much collateral damage, because you could still achieve what you were trying to do. The bad thing was, and you guys have seen this too, that the bad guys would always go in the places they know we're not supposed to hit.
Yes.
But as soon as they start shooting from those places, then rules change.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the bad thing was they'd climb into a mosque and shoot, or they go into a hospital and they shoot because they know we're not supposed to hit those things. A lot of times the guys would try not to. If it wasn't a threat, then you could usually just report it and maybe send it off to guys on the ground, or maybe some of the snake eaters that are down there. They can get up there and take care of those guys. But it was. Other countries or other people, that third world countries or other government organizations, know what they can get away with, knowing what we're going to be crucified for. Which kind of sucks.
That's a very old tactic and strategy, and it's never going to change because it is effective.
Yeah. We had, this is the first time, in Kosovo we didn't have it so much. But, we had the media was everywhere. We had media all over the base where we were. Of course, the media was with the units deployed, and going inbound. And we had some guys from Fox News on the base where we were. And they wanted to talk to some of our guys. I went, hey, that's fine. Because they come to me because I was the tactics guy. I went, I don't mind you talking to the pilots. I said, but do me a favor, don't go live don't talk live because we have airplanes launching. And all it does is just give away to the enemy. We have airplanes taking off out of this space. I said, they already know where you are. And all of a sudden they hear F-16s or, the F-18 Hornets are taking off from the Marine Corps. You do it live. They know where they're coming. So don't record live. The guy goes, yeah, well, I won't do that. And 2 days later, he's doing that.
Of course.
And of course, they got a reporter on one of the carriers out in the Gulf, and he's reporting live as planes are going off the carrier. And then, the one Army, I guess it was the Apache, gets knocked down, and they capture those two guys. And of course, I guess it was Fox was showing their families. And the guy that was kind of associated with us, I put a finger in his chest and basically threatened him. And I told him what he just did. I said, you mean to call back to the guys at Fox News and realize them putting that guy's family on TV saying, please let him go, blah, blah, blah. I said, just made things 10 times worse for him. I said, that is now being used for propaganda against him.
Yep.
I said, you just played for the enemy right there. And I said, if you ever do that with anybody in my unit, I said, I will come after you myself. And he was white as this table. They had no idea what they were causing, or what issue they were causing.
They never do.
Whatsoever.
They don't care. It's viewership and clicks.
No, day one mission, I was leading the day one mission of the unit for Iraqi freedom. It was me, and I had 3 young guys. We were a 4-ship. 3 young guys from me, never flown in combat. I was the only one who had combat experience, was why they paired me up with these 3 young guys. And I had reporters in my briefing prior to going. And my operations officer says, hey, Digger, you're going to have reporters in your briefing. I said, no, I'm not. He goes, you are? I said, I'm not. He goes, why didn't you want reporters in your brief? I said, I'm taking 3 guys who've never been in combat before, and we need to talk about some serious things here. I don't need reporters just for them to feel good about themselves.
Yeah.
He goes, well, fine, we'll just find something else to fly. And I let out a few explicatives, the captain to the lieutenant colonel, which is probably off. Again, it's March. I've been here since December. And I went, fine, you go find somebody else to fly with a couple extra words. And I walked away. And he came running after me. He goes, okay. How about if they're just there for the beginning part of your brief, which we call motherhood, which is this is what we're going to do to taxi, and this is what we'll do up to takeoff. And then when we come back, this is what we do for ground ops to get back to parking. I said, fine, they can do that. So we go to the brief. I have these 3 reporters from Associated Press, and I have one's from London, and I got these 2 other guys that are German. And, when the brief starts, it's very official. And so from a flight brief, you go, okay, 2, 3, 1, hack, time as black. That means shut up, brief starts, this is where your game face goes. So I do that. I got my 2, 3, and 4 guy sitting there in front of me, and I go 2, 3, 1, hack. Okay, what we're doing today is, and the German guy goes, oh, sorry, sir, it's okay if I record this part of the brief. Sets a recorder down on the table, click, record. And I got these 3 young guys that I know looking at me like, oh, this is not going to be good.
They started sliding down in their chairs.
This is not going to be good. And so I look at the guy and go, that's fine. You can record my brief. And then I do the knife hand. I went, don't you ever interrupt my brief again, or I will blah, 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 and I will throw you out of here. You understand? And the 3 AP reporters just went against the wall, didn't move.
Trying to fade into the background.
Yeah. These 2 guys.
The Homer Simpson into the bush.
That's right. And those 2 German guys just went against the wall and didn't say anything. So I was livid. And so right then I went, okay, we're going to get our stuff here. We're going to go out to the jets. Ground ops are going to be standard. Taxi takeoff will be standard. Once we come back and land, de-arm and taxi back is standard. Any questions? They go, nope, get out. That's what I did. So they were there for 30 seconds. And I said, get out. And then after that, I never had a reporter in any of my briefs because I made it back to PA that I yelled at reporters.
And there was much rejoicing.
There was, because the commanders never said anything to me about it. Only PA went, you were mean to the reporters. I went, they shouldn't have been in there. And then just left it.
We'll call it setting the tone.
Yeah, we'll call it that. That and being a little salty for being there for that amount of time.
You figure the military would have learned its lesson about press access to certain things.
From
the first Gulf War and
decades
after,
ago.
of course.
Well, what was it? Lebanon, when the reporters were on the ground in Beirut, and they filmed the Navy or the Marines actually, showing up on shore. It was like, how did you guys know that we were here? Oh, we were in your press briefing a few days ago, so we showed up.
It's just like, I mean, Geraldo almost got fragged by the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
I was watching that because I remember watching that on TV, and he's like, well, I can't say where we are, but he knelt down in the sand and started drawing with his finger. He goes, well, there's these 3 routes, and we're on this one. I'm like, are you serious? And then he wasn't there anymore.
I've got some stories there.
That guy's delusional.
It's so much. I think when the chair hit him, it kind of knocked him loose even more than normal when he did his show. But.
All right. Well, enough complaining about the media.
Grumble.
That's right.
Let's move on. So how long did you end up staying at Nellis and testing out all the cool guy stuff?
I was at Nellis from 2003 to 2006. And then I went to the staff at Langley, and I worked on the requirements portion for the F-35 and actually flew a lot of the sim missions for the F-35 for the production of the F-35 and the F-22. So I was considered a core pilot, but I didn't actually fly the airplane. I did all the sim work, initial sim work, before the airplane took its initial flight. And I did that until 2008, and then I made lieutenant colonel, and usually at that point you're on a commander's list where you're going to be a commander.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to find out where I need to go next. And this is when you start making phone calls to friends and things like that. So I'm like, okay, where do I want to try to go? And I had my operations officer from weapons school, who is now in 06. He's a commander. I can't remember. He was like part of the F-35 program. He's like, hey, Digger, where are you going next? I went, I don't know. What do you got? He goes, well, if you want to fly the F-35, I'll get you out to Edwards. He goes, but you probably won't be a commander for at least 3 years. I went, that's a long time. Because usually you're going to be an OPSO for a year and a half, maybe 2 years, and then you become a commander of a flying squadron. Mm-hmm. He says, or I can send you down to the 85th Test and Eval Squadron, which is the sister component to the 422 at Nellis, where I just was. And you can be the DO, OPSO down at Eglin at the 85th. I went, sounds like a good deal for me, man.
Pensacola's nice.
Yeah.
I'll go to Florida. So let's do Florida. And he goes, then we're gonna put you on the list. You'll become the commander. After 2 years, you'll become the commander of the 85th. I went, sweet. That'd be great.
It must be nice to have that sort of time projection.
Yeah, when you get to that point, that's what it is. When you're major and below, it's just like, good luck.
Army's the same way.
Yeah, so I got there, and I was the DO, and we had done a deployment. Well, not a deployment. We had done a flight out to Nellis to fly with our sister squadron on doing some test work. So we flew like 5 F-16s and 2 F-15s from Eglin out to Nellis. Did a little hop out there, and we were out there, and I was having some issues. I was not feeling the best, and I hadn't flown yet out there, except for getting there. And my vision was acting kind of weird. So I went to the doctor and I said, my eyes are really dry. And I said, it's messing my vision up. They went here to use some drops. It didn't help. So I'm supposed to fly. So I'm driving up to the squadron at Nellis, and here comes a 3-ship of F-16s are coming up what we call initial. They're flying over the runway to do their little break. I went, they don't look right. What's wrong with those airplanes? I'm doing all this stuff looking. And then I realized there's 4. I couldn't see the 4th one until I turned my head. I went, oh, that's not good.
Oh, boy.
So in the Air Force side, I don't know if the Army does this or not. In the Air Force side, we have a flight surgeon that looks after your squadron. Mm-hmm. So I called my flight surgeon, who's actually married to one of our F-15 pilots. And I went, hey, just hypothetically, if this happened and I saw this, hypothetically, what should I do?
Asking for a friend.
Yeah. It's not me, but I'm just asking. I heard this. And she says, Digger, you get your butt over to flight medicine right now. I'm calling them. You better be over there in the next 5 minutes. I went,
hey, baby.
All right. So I'll go over there, and the ophthalmologist looks at my eyes, and they end up, long story short, injecting me with fluid, so now my vision's red and all sorts of weird stuff. And they're looking at me. He goes, your eyes are perfect. He goes, your optic nerve is perfect. There's no problems. He goes, you have a problem. It's in your brain. I go, what? He goes, it's got to be in your brain. He goes, go do this other test. And I do the test where they put you in like a little looking dome thing, and you see the light flash. You got to hit the button. It's a lot better than sitting in the booth where you're testing your hearing. You know what I mean? So basically, they put one patch over each eye, and they basically flash the lights. And every time you see a light, it's broken into quadrants. You you click the button so that it moves all around. Turned out I didn't have any vision in this lower right-hand side of my sight on both eyes. I didn't know it, but I just knew things didn't look right. When things went in front of me, it was just like, whoa, that was kind of weird. And it turned out they said, you need to go get an MRI now, right now. So they wouldn't do it at Nellis. They went, you need to go back to Eglin. So they put me on a Delta flight. I flew back to Eglin. I went to see.
That's an expensive MRI right there.
Yeah. So I went back to Eglin and saw the neuro. They gave me an MRI. And then the next thing I hear is the radiologist goes, this guy had a stroke. And the neurologist goes, have you seen this guy? He goes, no, he's not overweight. He doesn't smoke. He said the readings are not at the right level for a stroke. This is not a stroke. And the neuro guy goes, he needs to go to UAB, 4 hours north, Alabama Birmingham University Hospital. And I went, he goes, you need to go up there. I went, okay. So I'm driving myself
Of course.
up there. And I go to the hospital and I meet this chief of neurology who turns out to be chief of MS neurology, which I didn't know. He does a couple of tests. He says, you have latency in your eyes. I said, what does that mean? He goes, the signal that your eye sees to when it gets to your brain is extremely slow.
Yeah,
I said, what's slow?
Yeah.
He goes, it's 135 milliseconds. I said, that sounds pretty fast. He goes, it should be about 90. I went, oh, okay. And he goes, and your MRI shows you have about 7 lesions on your brain. I go, okay. Is that bad? He goes, you're not supposed to have any lesions on the brain. I'm thinking, I don't know. I've never
Work
studied.
with me here.
I never studied. He goes, I'm going to admit you to the hospital. I go, I'm in a flight suit. I didn't bring anything. I didn't think I was going to be admitted. He goes, I'm going to admit you to the hospital right now. I said, I don't have anything. He goes, I need to give you IV steroids in the next 2 to 3 days. See if you can get your vision to come back. I go, what? He goes, yeah. I'm still kind of flabbergasted by, you got 7 lesions on your brain, sort of thing. He goes, and we need to do a spinal tap. I go, what? For what? He goes, we need to check your spinal fluid out too. I'm like, oh, and I don't realize.
This is coming fast, yeah.
Oh, yeah, because now he's checking me for MS. And I'm like, I don't really know much about that sort of thing. And so I said, fine. I said, but do not give me a gown. If I'm going to be here, if you're going to admit me and I have nothing else, I said, I want scrubs. Give me scrubs. He goes, no, you're going to get a gown like everybody else gets. I go, you will give me scrubs okay, you got to realize I've just had it. Mm-hmm. So I said, give me scrubs. I said, you give me a gown, I'm going to wear it backwards and I'm going to go commando. He goes, no, you won't. I said, look at me. Try it. I show up in the room they give me, scrubs on the bed. Perfect. Little booty socks, So I'm laying in bed. This other guy shows up to do a spinal tap. He goes, you ever had one of these before? I go, no, I'm really nervous. He goes, dude, it's no big deal. He goes, I'm not used to doing these on people that are fit. Yeah. He goes, just to let you know, this is so nice because, it's used to people that are pregnant or people that are overweight or something like that. But anyway, so I'm laying on my side and he goes, I got to get to this one spot in your spine. He goes, you're going to feel like a little jolt. He goes, it's not going to hurt. It's just going to jolt. He says, but that's exactly where I need to be. So he gets there and I went, oh, okay, that's not a big deal. It didn't hurt. It didn't hurt at all. And then he drained spinal fluid out. Puts a Band-Aid on my back, and I don't know about this sort of medical stuff. And he goes, all right, I need you to lay flat for the next 2 hours. He goes, your body's got to regenerate that spinal fluid. Because if you get up, he goes, you're going to get a wicked, nasty headache. I said, okay. I said, am I gonna leak out of this hole you just put in my spine?
It's a fair question.
I know. He goes, no. He started laughing. He goes, no. This is like a 3rd-year resident too. So we were talking football while he's draining fluid out of my back. But anyway, he goes, no, because when I pull the needle out, it kind of seals itself. He goes, you're fine. It's not going to leak. I said, okay. I didn't know. So I lay there, and I start getting IV steroids. And I'm looking at the poster on the wall across from my bed. And I realized, that if I looked at the first letter, like it was A, B, C, D, whatever it's going to be. If I looked at A, B and C and D weren't there peripherally.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow. And then I realized I couldn't write because I couldn't tell I was moving my hand. So I'd write and I would just stay right on top of what I had written because I couldn't see. And now as I was getting IV steroids, that was starting to slowly come back. Now I'm seeing A, I can see a little bit of B, C and D still weren't there, but then I could start to see again. But then I had to start wearing glasses from that day on. And my vision never came back 100%. It was about 95%. But he sat down with me and says, okay, Digger, he goes, since you didn't have anything else happening at the time you had your vision issue, like, you had a numbness in a limb or something like that. He goes, but I'm going to say with 85% or greater surety, you have what we call relapse remitting multiple sclerosis. I go, wow. I said, you just ended my flying career. That's the first thing out of my mouth.
Yeah.
Not, I got MS. I'm like, you just ended my flying career. He goes, I'm sorry. He said, but I said, okay, what do we do? How do we treat this? He goes, I want you to start taking this one drug. It was a drug I had to inject myself. This was in 2009, and the summer of 2009. And I said, okay. I said, how long do you have to do that? He goes, this will be for the rest of your life.
Forever?
I'm like, what? He goes, this is incurable. I'm like, what I just did is what I did. I'm like, what? I had no idea what any of that meant, because here I am in the latter part of my military career and everything's just gone. All of a sudden, everything's dropping off.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be becoming a commander of a flying unit. I'm in a flying squadron that I can no longer be in because I don't have the ability to fly anymore. The Air Force has no waiver authority for multiple sclerosis.
Right.
I'm like, I don't know why. I mean, it only affects the 5 senses of your body. What's the big
I
deal?
mean, yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, thank God you didn't have an attack while you were flying.
Well, yeah, because that would have been really nasty.
Yeah.
So anyway, I go back to my unit. Talked to the wing commander, who was a colonel, who was actually a friend of mine I'd flown F-16s with. And I said, okay, I got to go through a medical board. I didn't have to go through a flying eval board because it wasn't a flying incident. It was a medical incident. So I was disqualified from flying for medical reasons. So I still had my wings. I was still a pilot. I was just medically disqualified from flying. Yeah. And I couldn't be the DO anymore of the 85th Test Squadron because it was a flying position.
That's a slot that you have to.
Yeah, it's a slot you have to be a rated flyer, an active rated flyer. And he said, Air Force personnel said that I can either medically retire you or I can hold on to you. And I went, he says, what do you want to do? I said, I'm 2 years from full retirement. I said, I don't want to be medically retired. He goes, I want you to go lead this other squadron. He goes, I want you to go lead this electronic warfare squadron. I said, electronic warfare? I said, I'm a pilot. Electronic warfare to me is turning a switch on. That's the only thing I know. He goes, no. He goes, Digger, I need you to do it. He goes, we do a lot of F-16 stuff for foreign countries. So it was a foreign sort of thing. Yeah. He goes, but the commander needs to be rated, which is a pilot. But he goes, but it's a non-flying position. I went, okay, all right, I'll do it. Because I trusted him. I mean, one of these guys, if he said, hey, Digger, I need you to swim across the ocean, I'd be like, all right, okay, I'll do it. But, so he was one of those guys. I went, all right, I'll do it. So I did that for my last 2 years, and it was awesome. It was a great job to end on. And the Air Force was going to let me stay. They said, hey, you'll stay. And my commander, who was directly in charge of me, my colonel, says, hey, you'll make 06. You're going to make 06. I said, yeah, but I'm not deployable anymore. I couldn't deploy. I said, so you're going to put me at the Pentagon or back at command, and I'm going to be making coffee. I said, I can do that now. I don't want to do that. I said, let's end on this career. So I hit the button and jumped, and which was a great thing. And now my MS has been fairly stable for the last year or so. I've gone through 3 different drug therapies. I'm on a new one now. If you ever watch TV and see a commercial for Ocrevus, that's me. I take that stuff. It's twice a year. I get an infusion.
This is not a paid promotion for Ocrevus.
It is not. It is not a paid promotion. I get no money from it, and they charge my insurance way too much. But anyway.
But it's a miracle.
Yeah. So honestly, I was really blessed and lucky that something else bad didn't happen. Yeah. That could have been. If I would have been in the air and trying to fly and land that way, it would have been bad. Or if I would have been trying to fly formation with somebody else. Yeah. I wouldn't have seen them. I could have easily caused a midair and not knowing, sort of thing. But it's, I told everybody when I was OPSO at the 85th, I said, hey, I'm not upset. I'm really not upset. I said, all this has happened for a reason. I'm supposed to go see something else. I don't know what it is. And it turns out being a commander of that electronic warfare squadron was great. That was I got to be a commander, and I got to, from a previous enlisted side, be in charge of some enlisted dudes that were making some of the same stupid decisions that I made, and getting to school them without them ending their careers.
It was like coming full circle.
It was. It was great. And that was just awesome. So, but there you go. I digress. That's pretty much up to now.
I mean, we ask everybody if they ended their career on their own terms. And it sounds in a way you did.
I did. I did get to end on my own terms. even though it wasn't the way I wanted to end it, I did.
Yeah.
Because, I wasn't planning on getting out anytime soon. I was going to stay past, my 20 years as an officer just because I loved it so much.
Yeah.
I didn't have aspirations to be a general or anything like that. I just wanted to keep taking each step as it came. You know what I mean?
Having fun.
Yeah, I've had friends that have stomped on people to go up the ladder, in my personal opinion, have lost some experience doing that because they get promoted early to the next rank, things like that. I think you're missing some of the steps you should really take and really absorb some of the stuff from. But I had some great leadership that helped me through that time, and some general officers said, "Hey, Digger, whatever you need, dude, let me know. Dude, I'll help you out any way you need me to help you out," which was great because I wasn't asking for it.
Yeah.
They'd see me and they brought that up. And I took that to heart too and I said, okay, I must be doing something fairly right.
We have
These
that
guys are gonna
reputation that precedes you.
that knows I'm not being a jerk to somebody, and things like that. So it was never a career. It was never even a job. People still, I'm sure they do it to you today. Thanks for your service. Thanks for your service. You don't understand. It was part of my life. It was my life I was going to live. Yeah. It was what I was going to do regardless. I never considered it a job. I never thought I was going to quit. None of that sort of stuff. It's what my DNA said and what I was built for. That's what way I can describe it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think I already know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. With everything that you've been through, and then with your medical stuff going on from here on, would you do it all again?
Oh, in a heartbeat. Absolutely. And I've had people ask me that too. And I'm bent and broken too from the airplane. The airplane beat the snot out of me. 9Gs is tough on the body.
Neck.
My neck is messed up. My back is messed up. I had to have my shoulder replaced, and they think that's due to flying because it was so badly just worn out. They said, "Well, you were in a car accident?" The VA did. I went, "No." Well, I said, "I wasn't." He goes, "You have like a massive impact injury." He goes, "You have no cartilage left, and you're bone on bone, and you have all these bone spurs." And I went, "No," but I do it all over. Even if I knew that was going to happen, I'd still do it just because the opportunity to do something that's much bigger than yourself was such a fulfilling thing. And I remember when I went through, do you guys call it TAPS when you transition?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
When I went through TAPS and I couldn't wear a uniform, and I went through TAPS like on the very last day. And I remember leaving TAPS and I wasn't in uniform. I had a tough time a little while that I felt like I had no identity because for so long I had worn a uniform.
Yeah.
The only time I took it off was when I was done with work for the day and I was going to do something else. But now I'm just in regular clothes all the time. And I struggled for a little bit with that just because I just, what am I supposed to be doing now? I didn't plan any of this. But I figured it out. Now I'm retired. So I did something right.
Well, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for sitting down with us and sharing your story and your experiences and everything. This has been really great.
Thanks.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so
much.
much.
Roger, thanks. I feel like I just talked the entire time.
It's your story.
I know, but man, my son gives me grief because it's a standard fighter pilot deal. You give me a microphone, dude, I'll talk for 10 minutes or 10 hours, whatever you want. I introduced President Clinton right after Allied Force. Side note, I know we were getting ready to stop, but I got to tell you this was funny. The General Leaf, the one I was telling you, he's the wing commander. I took him on his first combat mission. He was a previous F-15C pilot. I took him on his first combat mission ever. Here's the captain. I'm not a weapons officer yet, and the wing commander. I'm leading a 6-ship of F-16s and an entire strike package, some other jammer guys and some Navy dudes and things like that. And it all worked out great. That's a whole different story. But General Leaf says, "Hey, Digger, if you had to introduce the president and you had to give a little speech for a couple minutes," he goes, "What would you say?" And I threw down the standard line of, we've done some great work, blah, 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 this, that, and the other. He goes, "All right." He goes, "Either you," and he says, "you or Fingers," Goldfein, the commander from the other squadron. He goes, "Either you or Fingers are going to introduce the President Clinton when he comes out here." I said, "Okay, cool." And my DO, his nickname was Pigpen. Pigpen says, Pigpen goes, "Hey, Fingers is out of town during that." And Fig Leaf, Dan Leaf goes, "All right, Digger, you got it." I said, "Okay, all right, I'll do it." Not a problem. Just an arrogant, full of piss and vinegar sort of fighter pilot guy. I'm 30 at the time, so 26 years ago. So the White House folks come up to me. They come out, Advon White House folks. They went, hey, Hillary's going to introduce you. I said, okay, cool. I'm not going to go into politics, but I'm usually a little more. I'm usually a little more conservative, right side, but whatever. He's the commander in chief, so I want giddy up. He's commander in chief. That's why he's here. So they said, Hillary's going to introduce you. She wants to know how you got your nickname. Remember, Dan, I already told you how I got my nickname. Right?
Be careful what you wish for.
And I said, no, she doesn't want to know how I got my nickname. They went, no. And these White House Advon folks are like in their mid-20s.
They're
a bunch of interns.
Yeah, they're young.
They're doing it to start their way up the ladder.
Yeah, so I'm like, no, she really doesn't want to know. No, she wants to know how you got Digger. I went, it's short for grave digger. Well, what does it mean? I went, she doesn't want to know. And they went, no, really, she does. Please tell us what it is. So just real quick, I went, when I was younger, I liked to date older women, and I just left it. They went, oh, okay, yeah, we won't tell her that. I went, thank you very much. And then, so that goes just fine. And so I write this little speech thing out that, basically they say, hey, we want you to give a little speech, 10 minutes is all you need to do. And then at the end, you're going to introduce the president. You can say it this way or say it this way, whatever. I said, fine. I said, all right. I said, do you want to see what I'm going to write, what I'm going to say? They went, no, it's fine.
Are you sure?
I did. I said, are you sure? I said, they said, this is just kind of be a cheerleader. It's a cheerleader sort of thing. Just kind of boost everybody up. I said, fine. Okay, I can do that. And then the day of the speech sort of thing, I'm sitting backstage. I'm standing back there with General, the Army General Clark. General Clark is standing next to me. Joe Lockhart, White South Chief of Staff guy. My General Leaf is right there. The Italian defense minister or something else. Digger Davis, captain guy, And we're getting a briefing from some White House folk or something like that. And here comes Bill and Hillary Clinton walking to the area. Well, he walks in, cuts right through the little group we're in, and walks right up to me. And he sticks his hand out and goes, how you doing, Bill Clinton? And I started laughing. I'm like, I'm in uniform. I went, yes, sir, know who you are. And I started laughing. He kind of laughed too. And then he just kind of peeled off. And then so I'm standing there, and I'm just like, that was kind of weird.
They didn't call him Slick Willie for nothing.
No, exactly. Dude, the guy, he's one of those guys who went, dude, I could drink a beer with this guy, but I wouldn't trust him. That sort of thing?
Slick Willie indeed.
That was cool. And he's a big dude. He's not short. He's like 6'4", 6'3". So they go out there. So we're all being announced to come out the curtain. They said, okay, Digger, you're going to be the last one that goes out. And then not everybody on the base knew, the people that knew me knew I was going to be a part of this. My squadron did, my commander did. So they announced, General Clark, General Leaf, Defense Prime Minister, I can't say his name, the president and Mrs. Clinton, whatever, and Captain Digger Davis. People were like, what the? You know what I mean? Here comes Digger walking out behind Hillary Clinton, walking up on the stage. We're all lined up. And I'm standing there, and General Leaf talks just for a minute. Defense Minister talks for a minute. And then I found out right before this that Hillary was not going to introduce me. Don't know why. But the Italian defense minister introduced me, which is still kind of cool. But as he introduces me, a couple of the colonels down the front there in charge of the wing, I heard one of them say, who was actually a good dude, he goes, hey, does anybody know what Digger's going to say? And all of a sudden I can see them. They're all looking at each other like,
did you clear this? Did you clear this?
Nobody knows. Nobody knows what Digger's going to say. And so I have one sheet of paper, and I put it up on the podium. And I gave a
boilerplate.
Yeah, just kind of like, hey, everybody did a great job. The last 72 days we've been kicking butt and taking names, and we defeated the axis of evil or whatever else. This is the battle between good and evil, and we beat the evil side. Blah blah. And then I said, but there's one person here that really wants to give recognition for all the hard work we've done. And this is at the end. So I hadn't said anything bad or anything like that. So I said, there's really one person here that wants to give recognition for all the hard work we've done. And so I'm at the mic like this, and he's standing right behind me, Clinton is. And I lean back and I go, but sir, I'm a tough act to follow. And at that point, General Leaf, my wing commander, goes, oh, Digger. And I can see him put his head down and shake his head. And And then I announced, the President of the United States, Bill Clinton. And he comes up and I do the smart salute and he salutes back and I grab my note and I walk back to my spot next to Hillary. And Hillary said something to me and I didn't tell anybody at first, but my unit, the guys in the unit said, "Hey, Hillary said something to you. What'd she say to you?" And I said, well, I walk back and she goes, "Hey, you got a really cute, ass." And that's not what she said. But that's what I told my friends she said. I said, no, she 10%
said. 10% truth.
Yeah, like 10%. She said, "Hey, that was a nice speech." And I said, "Thanks." But Clinton got up there and said, "Thank you, Captain Davis. And you're right, you're a tough act to follow. And you're not lacking in self-confidence either. If you go look in the White House archives, Dear Davis is made the archives because it's one of his speeches."
Yeah.
And they had to put it in there.
If POTUS speaks, it's official.
It's on there.
Yeah.
So that's my claim to fame.
You have been immortalized.
That's right. That's my claim, because now somebody 100 years now go, "Who is this Captain Davis dude? Hey, somebody look him up."
Something about Gravedigger.
That's right. So that was it.
Must have been a job he had when he was in high school.
Yeah, it's got to be.
That was just a funny time, but it was those things you don't ever forget. I mean, opportunities like that don't happen to people on the street. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're in the military, that stuff happens. That would have never ever happened if I would have just gone to college and been a computer programmer or something,
You get to be a part of history. Not
amazing.
Always for the better, but
not always, but it was amazing. That was an amazing time. And to be able to do that for so much of my career, at 56 now, I think about what other people have been able to achieve or do by the time, they've reached my age. And there's so many people that still are working so hard, and I got tired of living to work. Mm-hmm. I have a pension, I have a disability, and I'm like, okay, I don't need to have every single cool toy. I don't need all that stuff.
Amen.
I want to have experiences. I want to do that.
Yeah.
My youngest kid's 19, not in the house. So what am I doing? Why am I still working all the time? I need to enjoy life with my wife. My wife has a rare disease that knocks on her butt. I got a rare disease, and both of them are incurable too. So mine and hers. So I'm like, what are we doing? Let's just go traveling around, ride the Harley around, go to Sturgis again, have a good time.
you have that perspective.
Yeah, I'm glad I do, because there's a lot of people that don't. They live by what society says you need to do.
Yeah.
I think we've messed it up. I think we've missed, or we've changed it so much where you got to work till you're 62 or 65, and then you retire, and then you go and do stuff. That's not guaranteed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not guaranteed.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, sometimes it takes things like having a career cut short, or having a spouse with a incurable disease, or having an incurable disease yourself, that kind of forces you to relook at some of your priorities.
Exactly.
Whereas some people, like you said, aren't looking at it that way anymore.
Right.
They're living to work and they're working to live,
Yeah.
and that's it. And tomorrow is not guaranteed.
I know. I don't want to have any regrets that I didn't have a chance or an opportunity to do something with my wife or with my kids or to see my grandkids.
Yeah.
And I don't want to miss that. And I don't want to miss it because I was at work, and when I didn't need to be there, when I just needed to make sure that we are financially able to take care of what we need to take care of.
Yeah.
And we are. So we can still do other stuff. So what am I doing?
It's like the old saying, nobody on their deathbed ever says, "Man, I really wish I would have worked more and spent more time away from
Exactly. That's exactly right. Exactly
that
right.
perspective. So,
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your
Thank
time.
you.
Thanks,
today.
Roger. Thanks, Dan.
Indeed.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, it was great. I appreciate the time.
Absolutely. And thank you for your service.
It's never a job.
Well, that was great.
Yeah.
That was pretty exciting. I mean, my knowledge of Air Force and fighter pilots.
Yeah. I learned a lot today.
Yeah, that was greatly increased for sure. What'd you think?
Yeah. Same observations. I love, again, we say multi-generational military family. I mean, we're going all the way back into the 19th century at this point.
Yeah.
So I thought that was very interesting. Air Force. So he chose the Air Force, started out enlisted, and I love how we can track his progression, starting out as a junior enlisted airman in the Virginia National Guard, all the way to the very end where we see he's up for a command. It didn't quite pan out the way he wanted to, but and everything in between. I mean, he wanted to fly and be a pilot,
Yeah.
And so the path that he took, I thought was very interesting on how we got there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and like you talked about with the multi-generational families, so many of them were Air Force. It's not rare to see branch-specific service in families, but it's still really cool to see.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then him starting off as a young enlisted man and then, finishing out his career mentoring young enlisted men.
Yeah.
That was very cool.
Yeah, and it took, it did quite pan out the way he wanted with, ran into some health issues there at the end, but I love how he was still able to make the most out of it and with that mentorships as well.
So there are a lot of things in pretty much everybody's life that don't pan out the way you expect them to, or I mean, especially if you plan to, right? I mean, what's the one way to make God laugh is tell him your plans, right?
Right.
So, but he still had an incredible career.
Yeah.
Traveled the globe, fought the bad guys in several different places from, tens of thousands of feet in the air,
Yeah.
Got stationed in some cool places. I don't know about Korea. I don't know if I'd call that a cool place. You would probably disagree. But then being in Italy, and he was flying over and bombing the Balkans the same time I was there.
Yeah.
So that was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. He had a pretty exciting career. And I mean, he loved it because all he wanted to do since he was a little kid and talking to his dad was fly. That was it. Like you said, it wasn't
happen.
It wasn't a job.
Right.
It wasn't work. It was what he wanted to do.
Yeah, when you get to the end of your career and can honestly say, look in the mirror and say that this wasn't work at all. This, I had a blast.
Yeah.
Because he said it, and you and I have joked around about it many times. But people say thank you for your service. How do you really respond to that?
Yeah.
Everybody has their own opinion on this, I suppose. But it wasn't really service for me because I was having fun.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean it wasn't always fun or it wasn't always easy. You have to take it at the macro. But
yeah. Still, amazing stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if you want to get in touch with Digger, we'll put his contact information in the show notes.
Down in the show notes with all our website, social media links, all that stuff. We will add all the stuff that Digger himself deems appropriate, or wants ways that he wants people to connect with him on. Those will be
what he deems appropriate. Might be scary.
Okay. That's the methods in which he approves of you communicating with him will be posted down in the show notes.
Fair enough. Okay.
But you've got something for me.
I do have something for you. It is time for another free fire area. Are you ready?
Always ready.
Okay. There's an old show. It's called The Simpsons. You may have heard of it. Longest running sitcom in American history.
I'm familiar.
It's kind of tucked away down there. You may have heard of it. What is your personal favorite episode of The Simpsons?
Oh man, that is tough because while I was a very, very big fan as a boy and then as a young man, as life went on and things happened,
You're already hedging.
I really didn't keep up with it. So that's tough.
While you're thinking, I want to say how disappointed I am that you have not watched every episode of all 37 seasons or whatever.
I have lived with your disappointment for 30-something years. So you know what?
How do you sleep at night?
I'm okay with adding this to the list.
Okay.
Pretty much any episode with Sideshow Bob will always get my attention.
Okay.
Because how can a man that speaks High German be evil?
That's simply German for the Bart. The. Okay. So
I know that's not the specifics that you wanted, but yeah, that's the best you're going to get from me.
We'll get Sideshow Bob. Okay. I accept.
Okay. I presume that you.
Who, me?
Yes, you have a personal favorite, And I know that
I
you're
do.
I know that you're a Millhouse man, so lay it on me.
Nobody likes Millhouse. My favorite episode of The Simpsons, they're all great, at least going up to about the 18th season or so. My favorite episode, it's called Springfield with a $sign, and it's the episode where Mr. Burns starts a casino there in Springfield, and everybody gets drawn to it, of course, and then Marge develops a gambling problem.
Yeah, I remember
and Homer
that.
ends up having to take care of everything.
Yes.
Simpsons at its finest.
Yes. I know that you like to think of yourself as a Mr. Burns, but you are definitely a Millhouse.
Yes,
so.
yes. A connoisseur of sorts.
There are days where you're Ralph Wiggum, but, that's usually only when somebody breaks your Wookiee.
That's true. So on that happy note.
All
All right, so call to action. Please make sure you like, share, and subscribe the show. If you would like to support us, we have merchandise available on our home website as well. Yes, that's right. As well as there is a button down at the very bottom if you would like to help donate via PayPal. We would certainly appreciate it. This is a self-funded operation, so anything you could help would much be appreciated.
If you'd like to get in contact with us, you can also find our website there. It's at Tracer, or you can send us an email at info@tracerburnout.com if you're interested in being a guest, or if maybe even you just know somebody that would like to be a guest, or if you just want to send any sort of message along our way, you can use the email or you can use the social media links. So, thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed this discussion that we had with Digger, and remember, your service matters.